I'd like to try to call the meeting to order. We're a little behind schedule. That's okay. We have a quorum. It takes 5 members for a quorum, and I think we have 7, so fully constituted quorum. So I'll call the meeting to order. This is the October 16th, 2025 regular business meeting of the Horsehead Central School District Board of Education. Could we please start with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is for the board to adjourn to executive session, and this is for the purpose of discussing individual tenure reviews. We would anticipate returning to public session at approximately 6 p.m. Is there a motion? Any questions or comments on the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay? Abstentions? Okay, so we'll stand in recess, go to executive session, and be back in about 25 minutes. Thank you. Okay, the board is coming back from executive session. We'll reconvene to public session, please. And there was no action taken in executive session, just to be clear. So the first item, as we resume public session, is the approval of the minutes. We have item 2.01, action vote to approve the draft minutes of the September 18th, 2025 regular board meeting. Is there a motion? Any comments or questions, discussion on the motion? Call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? It reminds me, I was going to make a point. You'll notice we do have 2 board members who are not able to make it this evening with excused absences. Under our policy on quorum, 2351, 5 members is a quorum, so we're fine, but then also it actually takes 5 votes to pass any given resolution. It's not simply a majority of those present, it's a majority of the board. So for example, there the vote was 6-1, I believe. So it passes, but I just wanted to make everyone understand 5 votes is required to pass any resolution that we may encounter this evening. And if you want a reference, look at policy 2351. Item 3, community questions and comments. This is the portion of the agenda when we welcome input from community members, and there is a policy that covers community participation. I won't read the whole thing, but there is a time period, 5 minutes for individual speakers, 30 minutes in totality, unless the board votes to extend that to the extent necessary. And it is not intended to be a back and forth, but just to listen and to take questions, concerns, and items back for consideration. And we remind you of the need to not get into individual personnel matters or students other than the speaker's own child. So is there anyone that would like to speak to the board this evening? If so, please go ahead and approach the podium. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Norma Kwasnick, a graduate of Horseheads High School, and I drove school bus for Horseheads for 21 years, been now retired 22. I tolerated no nonsense on my bus, period. What I want to address is bullying. I got a call to go to the school at the high school with a student, a relative, and I was in the office. We took care of business there. The student was sent out, and I discussed with the principal there bullying. I gave him a suggestion, what I would like to do, and he was a little reluctant on my way of wanting to see it done, by contacting law enforcement, Horsehead Police, state troopers, the sheriff's department, anybody involved with in Chemung County to get together to have an assembly for the whole high school, so that those students can find out what the ramifications are if they bully somebody. I'm sorry, but I'm old-fashioned. I'm 86 years old, and I do not tolerate that stuff. Don't tolerate it. None whatsoever. And I've gotten 3 calls in the past, 3 years of family members. I don't tolerate it. I'm sorry. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But I think the school board needs to look into something, somehow, somewhere, to have an assembly in regards to bullying and the ramifications, and maybe a student or two gets caught, gets charged in some form or another. Maybe it just might wake up the rest of the students. And I do have to commend our illustrious governor, which I can't stand, for stopping cell phones in the school. Thank you, Ms. Hochul. I agree with that 100%. If I had a student today or a child today, they would not get a cell phone until they were seniors in high school, had a job, and paid for it. That's me. Anybody have any questions for me?
No,
I would like to see the school board do something about it.
Yes, thank you very much for that suggestion, and certainly something that we can take back and consider how that might be able to be possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service to the district.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Of course.
First, happy School Board Appreciation.
Thank you.
My name is Bill Finnerty. I currently serve as the president of the Horseheads Teachers Association. And during the last week of September, the HTA conducted a survey that reflected the current morale of the teaching staff in the district and the feelings that those members had toward district leadership. It was a 7-question survey with 6 of those questions using a rating scale of 1 through 10, with 1 being extremely negative or extremely ineffective and 10 being extremely positive or extremely effective. The questions were as follows. How would you rate the impact that the changes by the district this year have had on you professionally? How would you rate the impact that the changes implemented by the district this year have had on your colleagues in your buildings? How would you rate, question number 3, how would you rate the impact that changes implemented by the district this year have had on your students? Question number 4, how effective has your building administrator been in leading the staff through these changes? Question number 5, how effective have district level administrators been in leading the staff through these changes? Question number 6, considering all stakeholders, staff, students, parents, and community members, how would you rate the overall morale of the district? And question 7 was, if you could change one thing about the district right now, what would it be? And please explain why. I'm pleased to report that the HTA had over 72% participation in the survey, that members had approximately 1 week to complete. The responses of our members reflected a low morale and general negative opinion toward the changes, decision-making processes, and district leadership. Many of our HTA members have been working in this district for 20+ years and mentioned a decline in the public perception and reputation of the educational product coming out of Horseheads, as we were definitively the top rated and best school district in the area. In recent years, many feel that the perception of the district by the surrounding communities has diminished and that we've lost our shine and luster that we were so proud of. Many responses also echoed a sense of disrespect for our teaching expertise by the decision makers of the district, as the decisions that have been made over the past couple of years that have had major impacts on the students that we are able to, major impacts on the education that we are able to give our students have been made with almost no consideration given to our input, expertise, and previously existing data. We have been told time and time again that these decisions were administrative decisions, and we would be told what those decisions would be when the time is right. We had over 2 years to prepare for the impending changes that many feel have negatively impacted our district, and many feel that the district has been reacting to these self-inflicted problems rather than proactive in trying to find solutions prior to the emergence of these problems. Our staff perceives the morale of all stakeholders as being quite low, with many community members, students, and families seemingly unhappy with the current state of the district. On the other hand, given the significant number of changes that have taken place or been enacted since the start of the school year, the staff response has reflected an overall appreciation for the efforts of building administrators as we try to weather these storms together. If any of you would like to discuss this survey or our findings further, please feel free to reach out to me and we can set up a time to talk. Thank you very much for your consideration, and I look forward to reporting back to you in a few months after we rerun the survey.
Thank you very much for presenting us with that information. It's very helpful to hear.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is T.C. Palmer, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Big Class. This is my 11th year in the district, and I have been in education for 23 years. I'll be discussing the impact of the new 4-day cycle on the 4th grade classroom with the purpose of highlighting the loss of instructional time and the disruption of learning. I'll start with the impact on science and social studies instruction. With the 4-day cycle, total minutes of instruction for science and social studies have been reduced and disrupted. With last year's 6-day cycle, instruction in this area was consistently part of the schedule. There were no planned interruptions, and the block was built into the master schedule. Considering a 180-day school year with 30 minutes of daily instruction, this provided the opportunity of 5,400 minutes for science and social studies. With this year's 4-day cycle, instruction in this area is interrupted by a second special of the day 2 times in the 4-day cycle and a social-emotional lesson 1 time a month. For a specific week example, this would look like Monday, day 1, students learn science. Tuesday, day 2, students miss science and attend chorus. Wednesday, day 3, students miss science and attend social-emotional lessons. Thursday, day 4, students miss science and attend library. Friday, day 1, students return to learning about the science. Considering a 180-day school year with 2 days of this 4-day cycle for science and social studies instruction at 40 minutes each, this provides the opportunity of 3,300 minutes of instruction. This is a reduction of 2,100 minutes and an equivalent to 70 30-minute lessons or 52 and a half 45-minute lessons. Specifically for this month of October, there are 21 instructional days. 12 are scheduled for library, chorus, or SEL lessons. This leaves 9 days to teach science or social studies. This does not include drills, career day, or picture day. It is important to note that we are helping to prepare students to take the New York State Science Assessment in 5th grade. Impact on math instruction. The expectation for math instruction has decreased from 60 minutes in the 2024-25 to 50 minutes in the 25-26 year. Last year, with 180 school days of 60 minutes, students would receive approximately 2,800 minutes. This year, with 180 days of 50 minutes of instruction, students will receive approximately 9,000 minutes. This is a difference of 1,800 minutes in the area of math. My daily schedule includes a math lesson instructional block from 2:20 to 3:15 p.m. Teaching math lessons at the end of the day is incredibly challenging. Students, especially those who struggle with math, are struggling even more to focus, keep up with the pace of instruction and practice. Energy levels, engagement, and simple excitement for math are difficult to sustain at the end of the school day. Instrument lessons impact on instruction. Orchestra has occurred in the past over 3 30-minute lessons for a total of 1.5 hours, provided in the afternoon during recess in the RTI block. With the 25-26 schedule, orchestra lessons occur on day 1 from 9 a.m. to 11:15. In individual students or groups of students are leaving classroom instruction for at least a 30-minute instrument lesson during science, social studies, and ELA instruction. Band lessons were offered to students during the first 30 to 40 minutes of the school day for the past 10 years I've worked here. This provided students the opportunity to learn an instrument during a time when they were not missing new content and direct instruction. This year, students are rotating through 12 separate band lessons groups during 2 days in the 4-day cycle. Specifically, on day 2, band lessons run in 8 separate 30-minute groups from 9:40 to 2:30, with a break from 11:10 to 12:20 for recess and lunch. On day 3, band lessons run in 4 different groups from 12:50 to 2:30 p.m. Students are being pulled for lessons from all academic subjects, MTSS, and specials. Lessons generally run October through May, estimating that each month has 5 4-day cycles. A student taking an instrument will miss classroom instruction for 5 instrument lessons at approximately 35 minutes each. This is a total of 175 minutes missed for 1 month and an estimated 1,400 of instruction for 8 months. Considering our shared goals of academic achievement, here are some suggestions for moving forward. Number 1, the 4-day cycle takes away time from the science and social studies instructional block because of double specials and the scheduled SEL lessons. We continue our expectation of academic excellence, but the time to work towards it is lost in this 4-day cycle. Because of this, consider a 5-day cycle where double specials do not occur or return to a 6-day cycle. Number 2, include teachers in the schedule development process at the district level. For example, I have taught math in the morning for the past 10 years, and I know many of my colleagues have done the same. Students were focused and engaged. I would continue to schedule math in the morning if I had the professional choice to do so. I would place a read aloud or an engaging science or social studies lesson at the end of the day. Number 3, return students to taking band lessons before the start of the academic school day. For the past 10 years, students have done so. Thank you for your time.
If you had more, you can please continue. You can have some extra time.
I just said this provided students the opportunity to learn an instrument while avoiding the amount of time pulled from direct instruction and learning activities in all subject areas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the time to put that together. Would you be willing, Ms. Kilmer, to present that document to the district clerk? There was a great deal of information in there that I know the board would like to be able to refer back to and look at in more detail. So that would be great. Thank you very much. Do we have any other members of the community that would like to present to the board or speak to the board? Okay, then we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Item 4, report from our student representative. So, Ms. Jefferson, please take it away.
Hi everyone. Okay, so HOCO week for the high school students is in full swing, so we're wrapping up our Spirit Week. Tomorrow is Raider Day, so have your child come full swing, all the blue, all the white, all the things. I want to let everybody know that tomorrow is the last day to get HOCO tickets. Today was not the last day, so it is $20 unless you're a Varsity H member and you have done 2 hours of volunteer service for Varsity H. And you can get there during either of your lunch periods, 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B. And then our HOCO game is also tomorrow. It starts promptly at 7. Halftime will be the HOCO court and the announcing of your king and queen. We also have our pep rally tomorrow after school. And the HOCO dance is from 6:30 to 9. And that's all for HOCO. But I do want to touch on something else. It's called YAC, our club, and it is for students with disabilities, and it runs unified sports, but there are more coming. We have unified soccer, unified bowling, and unified swimming, but we're now starting unified theater. Right now, there is just going to be at the final act of the play, there's going to be inclusions of unified people to be involved in. But for next year, we're hoping to grow the program and hopefully have their own separate thing from the green room players. So if you are interested, please contact Ms. Tenbus. And yeah, and hopefully we'll have unified cheer also running as well. And that's all.
Thank you very much for that report and that really wonderful news about those great initiatives. Thank you.
Can I ask a fun question here? Today was Y2K Day. Did I get that right? Did I see that?
Yeah, it was
What does
Y2K.
that mean? What did you dress as?
It's the year of 2000, so it's like low-rise jeans. You know, like, like come on. You know, big jewelry, the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought maybe you all went hid in a cave because of what were going to happen at midnight on the New Year's Eve. Everybody remembers that. It was a big nothing. Okay, thanks, Serenity. So the next item on the agenda are presentations under Section 5. We have the redistricting consolidation review to be presented by Mr. Gill. Maybe slides behind us?
Yes.
Okay. We think we can follow along on our computers.
Yes.
So we're going to give it a moment for the load behind you. It should be no angle onto your face, so we should be giving that. Give it a moment here for the public to be able to see it. And that's There we go. Thank you, Terry. So tonight, we're going to present some initial reflections on the 2025-26 school year. 6 weeks into it, 15 months of planning, several years of background that has gone into this, decade worth of information that led up to this school year. So when we talked about this today, really it's an initial. We anticipate ongoing reflections on what the process and all the changes. We understand there's been some pretty significant changes for a lot of people. And what does that look like, and how are we working within those changes, prioritizing, and you're going to see that through this presentation. One thing that we had just want to give some historical context. So the root of how we got here to today was optimizing facilities and increasing instructional time while facing decreasing enrollment. That was the crux of how this came to be and all the changes that came to fruition at the beginning of the school year. I'm not going to go into the weeds. There is historically, going back as far as a merger, there are many more tasks or items that occurred during this time. Like I said, this conversation has been ongoing for quite some time. Of particular note, on 2017, 16, 17, 18, there was an elementary school day committee that came together charged to make a recommendation regarding the elementary teacher work day and ways to provide more student contact time and, if possible, more teacher collaboration time. That committee met for on and off for almost a year and a half, I believe. I chaired it towards the end when I first joined the district. Karen Barisi before me had started this committee and did a research based on how to use time during the day and best practices of time to increase and to meet that charge. This came from a negotiated unit apart with the HTA. 14 teachers and 8 administrators met over the course of that time, and they discussed a variety of options, including a 6-hour, 40-minute day, a 7-hour day, K through 12. They ended in their final report with a 7-hour and 15-minute day for 7-12, and a 6-hour and 40-minute day for K-6. So that study happened and came to fruition throughout 2017 and early 2018. And part of that, some of us suffered through a long experience with a vendor to which we looked at transportation and how to optimize. And again, this is 2017-18. And there was a study at that time that mirrors the model that we ended up incorporating this year. So this was not anything new as far as conversations about how do we get more instructional time. And it was rooted as far back as the 2015 conversation that led to this particular committee. The committee did not present to the board. Its findings were brought to the district as well as the HTA leadership at the time. Following that, about the same time period, knowing that change was coming and the strategic plan that we were using at the time had to be addressed, both the capital projects and the utilization of our buildings, as well as what has come to be our main thing, multi-tiered system supports, providing interventions appropriately to our students and the social, emotional, and academic and behavioral. The real spark of the impetus to move to increasing the day, though, came with New York State Ed changing their requirement. Up until last year, we were still in shaky ground as far as requirement, but knowing that we had negotiated a contract with a teacher's unit that was going to increase the school day, we were able to meet within those hours. So we were allowed to move forward with our state aid and the requirements to meet that, knowing that this year was coming into fruition. Instruction's our main thing. We're going to start there. You heard from Tacey, who spoke to some of the issues that we continue to work through. My team meets regularly with building and grade levels, and they're on a tour nearly since the beginning of the year to hear what's happening and to prioritize and to start making thoughts to how to better do what we do by keeping the main thing though. First task is we have to meet this requirement. You're going to see a chart later on that's going to detail this further. A priority of increasing elementary school time because they were the ones that were short the amount of time compared to the other buildings. The main thing. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 instruction in our MTSS system. This means protecting core instruction at time, not pulling out students for that you might have RTI or require a resource room. What I can't emphasize enough is that the system is built for the majority. There's always outliers. It's best you can build the greatest system in the world, but there's still going to be outliers that need to be addressed. But guess what? Our focus is just that. We're going to meet students where they are, and we're in a system. We create a process and a system to which we're committed to doing this, providing core instruction uninterrupted, and having an intervention in enrichment times. We also appreciate the music that has been historically in this district and the great work that they do. So yes, we had to confront the ideas of lessons and band schedules and rotating teachers that go between 3 or 4 different buildings, how to optimize their time and how do we do it. 712 had a model that many are familiar with, a rotating schedule. That same schedule was applied down to 4th grade. So the student was never pulled out on the same thing on the same day. That it wasn't before the school day when they might not be able to take advantage of the program because they couldn't get here, right? So we wanted to make sure music's important in this district. We want to make sure we gave it its time. Could we further tweak it? Of course. We're 6 weeks in, but we have a pretty decent plan in order, and we're looking to further optimize this. What we very, very much find, and we hold tight those, is that win block, what I need now, the idea of addressing students and the needs that they have in the academic, behavioral, and social, emotional. Now you have to find a school district or too many that actually meet the PD requirements in the elementary level. We are darn close to it. There is a requirement to meet every day. Recess is usually the go-to to fit that model. But because the board and the movement to add a PD teachers in our elementary and to do that rotation, we now have the appropriate amount of physical education time. Standardizing increased special area times across grades K-6. This not only had the benefit of creating a schedule that maximized, but it also set priorities to say, you know what, music's important, library's important, physical education, art are all priority areas, and they deserve the appropriate amount of time for students to spend in those rotations. Had an ancillary effect, of course, of also providing uniformed preparation time for staff. We do have anomalies when you have a 5th section in a rotation. Things get a little weird in the schedule when you have 5 sections of 4th grade or some similar 2nd grade. But for the most part, now it provides special area teachers and grade levels with uniform prep time. Something that was sought after in the committee that was formed in 2016. And establishing consistent recess and passing times for elementary schools. This has also been a difficult transition. We had staff, going from building to building as we consolidated in elementary. Some have routines, and it was a matter of, let's get everybody on the same page so that we're not hearing when we go to have our conversations with our different unions, like, well, they're doing this at this building, and they're doing this at this building. We really had to get some things in line so that everybody was on the same page. And just say, okay, we hear you, we got to make the best decision about all these individual items, and this was one of them. Let's make sure there's recess time, which is a New York State initiative coming this year. We're going to have to report on the recess time. We're ahead of that now, as well as passing times, ensuring that's in the schedule so elementaries clearly have time to transition. That's an ongoing conversation just this past week with in our labor management meeting with the teachers to talk about the situation that came up there and how do we better that. So we constantly have feedback loops, and we have to prioritize the changes and the impact that they might have. This one was half and half. You're going to see later there was a goal at the outset to address schedule alignment with CTE BOCE's AM and PM classes. You solve one problem and cause another. Be honest with you, that's what happened. Best intentions to go through and say, okay, we think this is going to help the schedule and this is going to benefit it. And in the end, the reality didn't play out that way. I can tell you in hindsight, by the coordination and conversations with BOCES and making sure we have that we are now. I know Chris Earl speaks constantly with the principal of the CTE, and I myself have reached out and spoken to the directors and the superintendent about these issues to make sure we're all on the same page and we're working for the same goal of student benefit. And they are, we all are. Transportation. Rich is going to stand up and go through some of these goals momentarily. This has been another topic that we've been working through. Best laid plans in the works for 15 months to create the schedule we have now and the runs. He's going to run through a series of slides, but what's important for you to realize, everybody to hear, is that transportation, we're given a parameter to work within, right? And it said, what can you do, because this is what we're looking to accomplish. And given the instructional day and the increases, how do we make this happen? Most importantly, with the resources we have. There were models back in 2016 that says, you can do this, sure. But you're gonna need 20 more buses, 30 more buses, 40 more buses in one instance of a scenario. Not realistic. So we had to look at what's reality within the capacity that we have, and how do we create a system around the instructional day that was changing to meet the state ed hours, as well as accomplish a whole host of goals that were important for our students. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rich to go through these goals.
Thank you all very much. Again, just to reiterate what Mr. Gill had said, the comment that we used in transportation was transportation did not drive this project, the project drove transportation. I can't tell you how many phone calls, how many comments we've got from the community on, well, why did transportation start this project? We didn't start it. Our job is to support it. The next one that obviously we started this conversation a while ago was trying to get our ride times, especially general ed in this particular case, at 1 hour or less, as Mr. Gill said, using our current resources, looking at the existing staff levels, the existing vehicle levels, how can we support the instructional day and still not have all those additions that he had mentioned. We also had that similar conversation with special needs. At that time, I'm reluctant to say, is that our special needs runs were all over 1.5 hours. And we're going to address that in a slide because of the specific nature and problem, I don't want to say problems, uniqueness of special needs runs. We did have some problems last year with some of our arrival times. PM, as many of you know, our afternoon high school runs, those buses should have been getting to the high school at about 3:05. They were getting there 3:25, sometimes later. And that our goal was we needed to address that. Same thing with the morning runs. Our second tier, our buses were supposed to be getting into the elementary no later than 8:15. They were getting there sometimes 8:15, 8:25, 8:20, 8:25. Not significantly late, but still laid that it had to be a goal that we had to address. ISMS, emergency evacuation. This one I want to kind of explain a little bit. This was the emergency take-home plan, and we use the word emergency, but it's for a non-life-threatening event at the school. So they don't have any power, so they have to go home early. The water main is broke, so there's no water. Again, under SED, they can't use the school. We have to then take them home. There was no plan last year, per se, to deal with the ISMS as a whole. If there's no power or heat on the IS building, chances are it's not on the MS side. So those two schools, from a transportation standpoint, were considered one building, and we had to take them all home. Last year, we had different routes for elementary, intermediate, versus a separate tier structure for middle school, high school. And they did not overlap. So you could have one high school, middle school bus that would travel to Big Flats and then pick up IS elementary, intermediate elementary, and then go to Breezeport. So that was a concern that maybe does not happen very often, and it's rare, but we would have to come with a good concrete plan to address that. Transfers. There's a list of reasons why in the transportation field you don't want transfers. Everything from timing, child accountability, approved locations, and so on. So the game plan was trying to eliminate as many, if not all, transfers as possible and streamline our routes. In order to try to combat some of our ride times, what you were looking at is maybe an elementary run that would travel down a road to drop off an elementary student, and then an IS, intermediate run, that would travel down that same road, and a high school, middle school run. So there were some roads that were seeing 3 buses dropping off in the afternoon, which just needed to be streamlined for effectiveness. That was the list of the goals that transportation was given as part of trying to participate in this project.
Thanks, Rich. And I think some of those goals were ongoing goals you also had. These are in conjunction, like these are things, not only the parameters of the school, but we always talked about the idea of the transfers and how we better that. That's an ongoing conversation. I know we've had the evacuation needs, twice in the last 15 years. I think we've had to do that there. And what would that look like? So certainly some combo of goals that go beyond just the 25-26 changes, but take an opportunity to make some shifts now and optimize given the different bus runs that we're able to put together. From the facilities and operational goals side, really just the underlying current was the optimizing of the occupancy of our facilities. This is more going to be a strand of conversation when it comes to capital project in months to come. So it's not one, but that was an underlying thing that happened here as we went through the consolidation and recently. And then ensuring timely and safe pickup and drop-off patterns on school grounds. I cannot emphasize enough, you've heard it from members of the community coming to the board in previous meetings, but the work we've done in conjunction with the village, the county, with the SROs, and our school principals, and the work that they've done to make sure that we get the cars off the road and coordinating with Rich and Mike Coughlin, really some strong adjustments made in a very quick amount of time. So kudos to that group for the work they did to make this happen. This next set of information was handed to me to say, okay, here's some information that was requested to some extent. So I'm just going to put it up there, kind of go through, try to understand it within the first 6 weeks of the school year. There was a question that would wondered, have tardy or attendance rates been affected by the changing of the school day? This was data that we just cleaned up, and I believe this today. You'll see this represents the first 5 weeks of school, year to year. So the first 2 columns are attendance for the first 5 weeks of school. No discernible differences in our 3 elementary schools when it comes to tardy rates or attendance rates or referrals of any kind. My goal was at some point to try to limit those referrals to specifically to attendance, but really the elementary, they don't exist that really. So those are referrals just in general for any code of conduct violation. Normal ebbs and flows, nothing that was alarming to affect from a reason from a year-to-year change in the system. Again, just a data point to work from. At the end all be all. Similarly, we have the secondary. You'll see similar trends. The one I will note that we do have an explanation a little bit is the middle school. You'll see an uptick in the first 5 weeks due to, and that is only because the warning system they used prior for cell phones, they are documenting it in the system now as a referral just to keep track of when a kids have been spoken to. So part of that uptick from the 65 last year to the 94 for the same 5 weeks is due to just making sure there's a stronger tracking of cell phones due to the new policy and in state law. So year to year, not nothing to mark from this data set as a change. There was a question, did we see students that went to homeschooling because of the change? Pretty constant since COVID, ebbs and flows depending on families that come in and out that have to report to the district and go through the process that I had. So again, nothing gleaned there. As far as the instructional day, speak about the year-to-year difference that we see. I'm going to put up a pretty confusing graph. It'll be on the website for you to look at, to really get into. I'm simply going to go through the columns, and I'm going to highlight one particular column that's relevant. There's a document that each year that Dr. Douglas has to submit regarding the amount of times, and it has very specific requirements. It's an Excel document that we submit for state aid purposes. It breaks down our buildings and it requests this very specific information to be shown. So this is from last year, 24-25 instructional day. And it outlines the student day, recess, how much time, your lunch, transition times, arrival and dismissal, and your student instructional day. And then multiplying all those numbers to get your 180-day student calendar. So it shows the amount of instructional minutes. It's not just the student day that the state wants to know. They're asking about instructional minutes to hit that 900-hour mark. So it's been said that our middle school was always in good shape, our high school was in good shape, and there's a point of clarity that I think is important. It's not a bar to achieve, it's a minimum to achieve, right? 900 hours is a bare minimum. It's not a bar, like, oh, we've made it. No, it's like saying proficient. You got the right amount of hours to get your state aid, good for you. It's not a mark to say, okay, we can stop short now. You know, if we value the instructional time and the work we do with students, then 900 is not a magical number. It's a bare minimum. You can see in that first column, the most relevant thing has been bolded, and that is the hours that we've been short over the course of the last several years. The high school was in some difficult shape in previous years because of activity period not having been assigned a supervisor. That was adjusted last year with conversations between the unit and the district to make sure that we define that so that we can gain those hours back 24-25 for the high school. And that's all the footnote represents. So the most important part of this is that last column that multiplies everything out and shows you how close we are to that 900 hour and the 990 minimum. In comparison this year, you'll see the same information put out with the current structure and what we have to report, and in the end, how many minutes and where we are. Being the 48 hours over for our K4 and the 48 hours for our 5-6 does permit us opportunities when it comes to the concern of heat. And when we have to close for heat, we lose those hours. Those are hours we have to reduce from that 48, but we're still above the state aid number. So we're still receiving the appropriate state aid. If I remember right, if we were to be one day under, right, our state aid, so one day at 900 hours, 897 hours, 90 change, that would be a reduction in our state aid of one day out of 180, which would be 154,000 reduction loss in state aid if we were to be beneath that number. I think I got the number right For the whole population, yes, thank you. It'd be prorated based on the number of students in that particular building that was affected if they were to be under, so that just represents the whole district. So if the K-4 came under only, it would be representative of only that population being under. We have a nice padding of the 48 hours above the minimum requirement. K6, if they were to fall under a day, would be 82,000. Loss is daily. So we're in a comfort zone. We're just have a little bit above that we could, whether it be the state allotted snow days are there. If additional snow days are needed, we have options. If heat days are needed, we have options without going to a remote learning plan. I'll say that again. We have options so we don't have to go to a remote learning plan. Here's the one that the salient piece, the side by side, right? Here's the number of minutes from year to year, 24, 25 to 25, 26. So again, very close to what we was talked about for going back nearly 8 years now as far as a goal to achieve in our elementary minutes. This is just a graphic of the previous school day. This represents the 24-25. I remember Dr. Douglas and others talking about, well, here's your elementary day, and then outside of that, here's your other day, and they're stuck within each other. The high school and the middle school book, kind of create this outer force, and the intermediate and elementary are stuck in the middle, and making any adjustments to transportation would give Rich a headache, and then some. It was impossible without a great change to happen. And that's what you see when you see the staggering of that 50 minutes we've always talked about to allow for the appropriate drop-off times. And students to be, and to get you're gonna see later, all the benefits that came from going to this in our transportation model and our instructional model. So I'm going to hand over for Rich for a couple slides to go through some transportation topics.
The first slide is a reflection of the data information, like Mr. Beal said, regarding parents that register their students for busing versus what that percentage is to the total enrollment we have at those schools. So that's just information. I think one of the things I would like to not point out about the chart, but about historically, that this is the third year we did this. Prior to, we didn't know what children were going to ride the bus. So we knew students were assigned to this bus run, and we prepared on day one to pick them up, but how many times would we go to a stop and go to a stop and go to the stop and not have anybody there? The other item is that we knew there was a percentage of those enrolled versus in school versus those that would ride the bus, and we kind of estimated that. So on a basic run, when we talk about putting the route together, paper and pen, we would assign approximately 80 or 90 students to a bus that had a capacity of only 65, thinking that the general percentage would keep us under that, and if it didn't, then we had to scurry around on that day to come up with another bus and another plan. This really had helped us down the road, including today, in better efficiency in our routes. Roll times versus ride times. So as has been said before, and we're going to address this today in my slides with the effort of transparency, I want to go over three terms real quick. The one term is called roll time, and that's a new term that we've put together under this project that talks about when the bus is rolling with students on it, but they're not getting delivered at home. Basically what you're looking at is that roll time is from middle school, intermediate school, when kids are on the bus, rolling to the high school to pick up the high school students. We've sometimes used the word transfer in the past when we talked about that, but the term we're using is roll time. Load time. Load time is the amount of time that we have students on the bus and loading at another school. So in this case, we have intermediate students, middle school students on the bus, and we're sitting at the high school loading them on, so we're calling this load time. And then the final term, which we talk a lot about, is ride time. That's the amount of time that students are on the bus from their school getting delivered at home. In this new redistricting, though, we're picking them up at high school, middle school, intermediate school, then taking them to the high school, and then from the high school, the run starts where we calculate the ride time. And I have some charts to talk about that in a moment. But when you look at the graph, like Mr. Gill had before, we've also extended the ride time and load time and unload time. And just the general essence that I'd like to point out about this particular chart is, in order to make this process successful from the transportation side, look at the staggering. We had to stagger start times. In this particular case, you're staggering the intermediate middle school, the high school, and then the elementary school, and that's how we can get this to work. Again, with that term that I had written down before, existing resources. This was one of the few ways that we can make this work without any additional buses, without any additional bus driving staff. And that was a key component when we were trying to set up our goals on this. The afternoon, you're looking at basically the reverse staggering in the PM. And this is the chart that specifically, you can see in the lower left-hand corner, designates that roll time of picking up these students at MSIS, and that roll time that we're factoring in and not factoring in, and we'll talk about that, to get to the high school to then load those students. And again, this is all done, and I think it was talked about before, is with the understanding that we would maybe have a cost savings, but would not have to add staff or purchase additional buses. That was a key element of when Mr. Gill says we had to stay in our parameters. Transportation had to stay in that parameter to try to make this successful. This chart is going to need a little bit of explanation, and bear with me. 2 quick points to make. First, this we put together in the essence of transparency. We know that conversation's out there. We know people have talked about it, so I would like to address it. Number 2, when you look at it, some of the time, say 33 minutes, 39 minutes. I did this on an Excel spreadsheet with the thanks of Haley helping me, and I couldn't break the timeline any smaller than 5 minutes. So some of these lines would probably be a little over a little bit, but I can't get the breakdown into 2-3 minutes. So we just kind of put it to the closest line possible so you can get the visual effect. So what you've got here is you've got blue. This is our afternoon runs, where that is our roll time. So our roll time is showing 15 minutes that we're going from ISMS to the high school. This is significant this year because it's 37 buses. It was different when a bus could go from one, go to the other, pick them up, and go. But now it's a school as a whole. So now you have to accommodate that time. Red is our load time. That's 6 minutes that the bus is sitting there with children from another school loading the high school students. And yellow is our ride time. And this is the one that I just kind of want to spend a little bit of explaining. The far left column shows the number of routes. 22 routes, that very first line, is delivering 1,058 students. All those students have a ride time of 35 minutes, way under an hour. But when you factor in the roll time and the load time, they are still under an hour. That's the good part. That's the success of our story. But what you'll have is you'll have parents that are on the parent app, and we know this is not a secret, that's going to say, my child's on 1 hour 10 minutes, 1 hour 15 minutes. Well, does that contradict the goal that we have? And it's a mixed message. If you look at the next line, there are 2 buses that transport a number of students, but of the number of students, have 13 MSIS students that are on the bus for an hour, but their ride time is still under an hour. We never really talked about total bus time. So if you look at the bottom line, for example, you have 2 routes. You factor in their roll time, their load time, and all that yellow. There are students on those 2 buses that will be home in way under 56 minutes, and you will have some students that will take up to 56 minutes to get them home. But if you look at the second to the right column, if I'm confusing you, clear as mud, that the total amount of time that they are on the bus is 1 hour 23 minutes. And that's the conversations that we've had with parents and it shows up on the parent app, so it's not a secret, it's nothing that was hidden, but that's the reality, that's the transparency of what we're faced with the parameters that we have. Now, you could say potato, you could say potato, but yellow-wise, everyone from the time that bus leaves the high school to they get home is under an hour. But yes, there are 59 students that will be on a bus when you factor in the load time and the roll time, 1 hour, 23 minutes. And this is presently, this is as of now, this is not the beginning of the school year, because our staff, not just our dispatchers and our office staff here, but all of our drivers were tasked with coming into dispatch, finding a way how we reduce this time for children. There's 100 people in your department all working towards this goal, and we have been tweaking and we have been adjusting from day one. And we're still doing that, trying to find ways on how to reduce these numbers for the betterment of the students.
I just want to provide context for some people that are looking and don't know the concept or the visual behind it. This is referring to in the PM, just in case it's very clear, we have students that get on at the ISMS. The bell ends and the day they get onto their bus and the roll time, they go to the high school, to which now they park and wait for high school students because it's a 5:12 run. So that's the representation of the blue being their roll time from the ISMS when they loaded and now to the high school. And then they're going to sit on the bus while the high school students get on, and then they're going to ride home. Total time. If you look at the last column, yes, from district property to home, 100% of our students get home in less than an hour. If you were to take into account from their place of origin, you have to add in their roll time and their load time. And then we have 59 students of the 1,100 change, whatever it is. Those 59 students, 13 on those 2 runs, 21, 11, etc., maintain for additional amounts of time past an hour as noted for a total bus time. Again, it's a celebration. It's as you're going to see in some stats coming up and some upcoming graphics, a lot of hard work done to get to this point.
The next chart, kind of joking around, is the only reason I agreed to stand up here with Mr. Gill, or else I was going to walk. If you look at the under 1 hour time frame and compare where we were with our older students and younger students last year versus this year. And again, we can't go tier 1, tier 2, because remember, the older group of students was high school, middle school. This year it's middle school, IS, and high school. So there is you can't quite compare apples to apples, so to speak. Last year, under an hour was 65% of our older students, 46% of our runs were under an hour for our younger students. The one that is the proudest of all is 2025, 2026, 100% of our elementary students get home in under 1 hour. No roll time, no ride time, no roll time, no load time, just ride time. That, from our standpoint, in and of itself, is a significant achievement from where we were 1 and 2 years ago. Going at our older students, 98.7% are under an hour. I only have one run that has a ride time, and that's in the morning, over an hour. And we're not done yet looking at how we could address that. When you factor in that previous chart that just shows all the yellow, disregarding the roll time and the load time, we are at 100% under an hour and a half. Like I said, that is significant from a year ago. If you were part of our refresher training last year, not this year, last year, I put up a slide for our transportation staff that says pupil transportation like you used to know it no longer exists. Everything got changed, from how we do the runs, when we do the runs, what's the order, how you deal with dispatch, everything, including how the runs were structured. They're all new runs. They all had to be rebid to stay within the contract. We went from a top-down approach of changing everything so our department can meet these goals, these numbers. And that's why I think they gave me the microphone, because I'm not quite sure I can take Tony, but it would be a good fight, because we have 100 people in our department that are proud of this, and yet we still take criticism on why we do what we do. It's difficult, but they're very proud of trying to achieve this. And this is not me, this is bus drivers saying, Rich, I did this, I did that, I got these kids home. I got a better idea to shave 4 minutes off my run. Talk to dispatch, let's get this worked out. You can shave 4 minutes, we're gonna do it. Special needs. I have somewhat of the same type of enthusiasm on this as well. Last year, a board member, respectfully, Rich, we got to work on this. I need you to focus on this. All our runs for special needs were over an hour and a half. I can't give you a percentage, Joe. Some of them were under an hour, some of them were under an hour and a half. They were all over an hour and a half. We have been able now to take almost 60% of them and put them under an hour, and we've taken all of them and they are now under an hour and a half. And that's 48 runs encompassing 12 buses. One of the ways we did that is we created a 2-tier system for special needs buses. So that means we pick up some kids, we take them to the schools. We then go pick up some more kids, take them to another school. You also have to understand when it comes to special needs, the left box, we're not taking just to our schools. We're going to BOCES Bush campus. We have a couple buses going to Southport on the other side of Elmira. Just figure the transit time alone, if you started from the high school and went there, it's probably 20, 25 minutes. How about you pick up one student in Aaron Breesport on the top of Terry Hill, you're looking at an hour just to pick up one. Special needs students have disabilities that sometimes cause more time to load them on the bus. Wheelchairs take time. They're not like a general ed bus where you tell the student you've got to be at your pickup 5 minutes before you run. Wait out there, the bus pulls up, you jump and go. You cannot do that with special needs students. All that in the configuration, and they say, well, that's why it's okay to be an hour and a half or maybe an hour 45, or why we said 2 hours would be acceptable. But we said no. Like Tony said, that may be the minimum standard, but we've got to do better. And we did. And those are the numbers to show that. The next one is turned over to Tony.
Rich, you were like Air Force, so I don't think we're fighting. This is a slide to provide to look at later for those that are interested. It'll be posted It is just to clarify what exactly happens when it comes to our CTE according to what our transportation, and working with Rich and Chris Earl about exactly what happens, what's the logistics, what did we monitor, and this is as of like today, like this week. We've tweaked our numbers and continue to find efficiencies. We even have more conversations coming about to change this current school year and make it even better and trying to adjust. You can see in 24-25, I bolded at the bottom the most important piece to note, and that it was a problem that we had seen over the years, that when a student came back from CTE in the afternoon, they would come down, and for a variety of reasons, that bus might not come at a time limit. They'd get out and they have to get to their bookend, their 10th period class, which is only 40 minutes, that runs all year. Not a very efficient use of staffing, something we also corrected with the new schedule, but more importantly, it impinged on student instruction time in that 40-minute class. On paper, they were supposed to arrive in enough time to get off, be picked up, get down, and get to their 10th period. Practice showed us that it didn't always happen, and it was affecting their last period class with us. So we set forth with an adjustment, and in September of 24, there was a decision made in a conversation with the board about what does that look like and when should the start times be. And the model that was shown actually did show we should go back to what it was 20 years ago, whatever it was, with a 7:25 start, right? So that's a consideration that's out there that I'll get to later, because that would adjust and would have fixed both issues. Inadvertently, in the attempts and what has changed, we've shifted a problem for our afternoon students to a problem to our morning students. That's stated, I'll talk more about it in a moment. We have worked very diligently to shorten those times, and with the BOCES principal, Chris Earl, has contacted and just checks in with students about academics and making sure all is good, and we've monitored when other buses are also arriving up there. Not us, actually, BOCES is assisting Sudana with when other school districts are arriving, and are we within a certain range that's acceptable. We still want to push back that time. We still got to get those kids there earlier. So that is a conversation that is ongoing as we prioritize what are the short-term and long-term changes we need to make to tweak this large system. So again, one problem in the previous year, thought we corrected, caused another problem in the following year. So when we think about what we tried to accomplish, Rich, you went through all these pretty thoroughly. I'm not going to spend more time on them. The idea is that we feel good. The only one you're going to see is the last one, and unfortunately it's covered up by the slide deck. It says reduce/eliminate student transfer sites. That's a work in progress, WIP. That's something that we still have for parochial and our private schools, still do transfers in the current system, but all other transfers, correct, have been removed as a long-term goal that we finally achieved. Now, what we're going to admit, we still would like to tweak that and see if we could do that better. It just presents a very different problems when dealing with non-pubs. But we'll still look at and see if we can do that better. Academically, instructionally, not those minimum requirements. We increase the student time, educational time, and you see it, work in progress, that better alignment with the CTE, BOCES, AM, and PM classes, as well as the 6 students that were affected with the New Visions AM that we referred to, board meetings. What does that look like? We work with those families and to get a model, like I said, more in a moment. So works in progress, let's talk about that. The high school first period ends at 8:55, with CTE beginning at 9 a.m. at Bush campus. Resolution as of right now, as of today. Rich has added another bus to transport students. We've assigned students to a bus based on the program location. What was happening is they might just load where they want, but if that bus has got to drop off at 2 different buildings up on Bush campus, that's a delay to the whoever's getting last. So now you get on this bus because this bus is going to this building. So an efficiency, not having a delay drop in one unloading and then a second unloading. So it was an optimization that happened to close that time. Discuss where we load at the high school. We're going to avoid a couple more stop signs. We might shave a minute off again. We are really looking, as Rich said, to the minute to try to address this. And I can't emphasize enough, maybe it is a fault of the past, but something we get better with, improving coordinating our conversations with the BOE administrators to ensure instructional times are met. So ongoing, working on it. New visions, same situation, except they're not just going to Bush campus. You remember from the conversations with the board, to the board on Delmar College. We're working with them. Chris checks in, their staff checks in with them to ensure they have and getting what they need and they're supported. I think there was academic concerns, of course, with these families, but certainly social emotional. And we do care about that. That's the core of our work right now, right? Social emotional, behavioral, and academic are all important. Matter of fact, the board has supported us adding those social workers ongoing to the system to address that particular aspect of our Tier 1 work. So, and what does that look like in a delivery to assist our students? So, it's not just the academics making sure that they can be there on time and they're good here and there. It's checking in on them to make sure they're okay. And I want to make sure we continue those conversations. Looking ahead. 6 weeks of implementation, right? We're going to have an ongoing conversation. We're reflective in our practice. We're passionate about what we do. We got into this business because we love doing what we do with students and trying to benefit and do what's best for them. So we're going to continue that work. In that reflecting, we have growing pains. You have a huge system change, right? It happens, whether the communication and other issues could have been done, absolutely. We got to be reflective in our practice and what can we do better moving forward. So, large change comes larger problems. When you make a mistake at our level, the ripple's larger, right? Monitoring elementary students that early drop-off usage. You remember that we offered, if eligible, for students to come and take advantage of prior, if the circumstances of the home needed because they couldn't get on the bus. We do have a number of students that are taking advantage of that and families. We're monitoring that. There was a conversation at some point, does that end or do we continue it through the year? So we want to make sure we monitor that and figure out what comes next as we set a deadline in December, January. We revisit that and how that might look. But we are definitely looking at it now. We're not going to wait. We have constant feedback groups. We meet regularly when union issues arise with any of our unions, as well as a standard meeting for a couple of our units. We have a standing monthly meeting. We have engaged, and my team has been amazing with their work that they've done, and the regularly, Joe, Tiffany, and Kelly, kudos to them, and working with building principals, and going and doing site visits, and working through the instructional changes that have happened, and optimizing the schedule, and how the schedule is supposed to work, and what's best for it when it meets the main thing among the two systems. So we're going to provide a range of supports to staff, professional learning and other, to continue, or just being there to hear what their idea is. No different than when Rich was referring to his driver coming to him saying, hey, I got an idea to shave off 4 minutes. My team is approached with ideas, and we have to assume we got to prioritize. We have to identify what's a short-term and a long-term adjustment to the system. There's course adjustments. It's a huge system. We just got to figure out what can we do now and what might be something we want to prioritize later. So that's an ongoing conversation. We're 6 weeks in. We're developing these ideas. And that is all I have. Myself and my team are welcome to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Aaron, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Gill. And Rich, thank you. That bus time is impressive. I know how much work you folks have put into it, and it's really impressive. It deserves a round of applause, if not true. So. Yeah. I mean, it's impressive. Tony, I have a question for you. How many students are currently participating in the early morning drop-off?
I do have that number. We had 20 students were originally eligible and signed up for the program. Currently, in attendance, I don't have one building's, but I'll add all 8 of them together. We have 23 students participating as a best guess.
Across all 3 buildings?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
about less than 10 per 3 buildings.
All right. Okay. very pleased that our district is doing this for parents. And I'm even more pleased that you were looking at this earlier with a possible continuation through the end of the year. I feel it's really important that we help these parents out the best that we can.
And no, in addition to that, we constant communication with Kids World and Deb Semsky about the IS opportunity to
Yes.
provide that. That's an ongoing conversation. Little state ed or Office of Family, whatever that organization, just some issues we're dealing with them to get that opened up and ready. I think that might be launched, but and seeing the interest there to support the IS families as well.
That's really great. And I know there was conversation surrounding how we were managing that staff-wise. Can you share a little bit about how we are managing that early morning
That's on
elementary?
TA support, yeah, TA.
TA support. So are we flex timing or paying?
I believe it's pay.
All right, thank you.
Correct.
Others with questions for Mr. Gill?
Has it always been the practice of transportation that when the kids get to school, they sit on the bus for a certain amount of time before they're dismissed?
There's established times at all different schools, different times that we can release the students. So if a bus route has a release time of 7 o'clock and they get there at 6:55, they are required to keep those students on the bus until that 7 o'clock time frame. Each bus may have different problems, different issues. Some will get there a couple minutes before 7. Some will get there 7:05, 7:10, in which then they pull up and they can unload immediately. So each bus is unique in itself, but they're all targeted with that unload time. They can't unload, so if they get there early, they have to hold the kids until that. Sometimes what we try to do as staff and say, okay, how do we adjust that bus time? Instead of that bus getting at that school at 6:55, getting there at 7:01 to avoid that. Because when they're sitting on the bus, they also become a student management item. And that helps to eliminate that by the least amount of time on the bus.
Right, because I notice, I drop off in the morning, I notice buses sitting there with the kids on. And even dropping our students off, they go in the cafeteria and sit. So it's like, hurry up, get there and sit. That's, that's how the schedule is, but it just is like,
It has been, and we had that last year in the high school. That was, and it depends upon the bus. Sometimes they're going to get there early. Sometimes there's an anomaly that they get there early. But that, you see it in the morning at the high school for the last 15 years. Bus parked, waiting for doors to open.
right. I mean, I'm sure it's always been an issue, but I just notice it that it seems like there's a lot of sick time. Just like your example, your 5, 6 kids get out at 2:05 or whatever, they sit on the bus for 10 minutes, then the middle schoolers come out and load, and that's another 10 minutes, then they drive over to high school and they sit for another 20 minutes, so, that's a lot of restless time for students who've been in a school building all day, now they get on the bus, and, do you have more discipline issues with all these kids, I mean, because that's like 30 minutes before they actually start driving to the destination.
We're collecting data on student management right now, so I don't have an answer. I mean, I very much like to have the data. We collected all the write-ups and the parent complaints and the principal issues last year, so we have one complete year of data. So now we want to base it this year, on a couple of things. Some of the buses just have more students.
Right.
And so we're in the presence of collecting that and analyzing it yet, but I just basically had the month of September, and that was a short month for us, so I can't quite answer that just yet.
Right. That would be a concern that I would have, because you have one driver and say 35 kids sitting with, they're definitely kids.
Please.
Okay. Is it working? Okay. I didn't know if transportation keeps track of how many would know for the next year, maybe this bus could take more kids or, the combined runs. And then the other thing I look forward, because I'm an employee at BOCES, so I'm a pretty big BOCES advocate, for students at BOCES right now. I'm excited to hear that you guys are going to try to get them there a little bit earlier. On the flip side with the new schedule, I've noticed both AM and PM BOCES students sit on the bus for 20 to 30 minutes, whether it's at BOCES or at Horseheads, before they're either on their afternoon bus to leave for the day if it's PM, or allowed to be back in the school. So I think that's kind of a waste of the students' time that I don't remember ever having before. So if you guys could maybe look into that. So there's a pretty good amount of time where the CTE kids sit on the bus, both AM and PM.
Up at BOCES? I want to make sure I'm clear what you're saying, because we've been in conversation with Mr. Donner about what the times are.
In the beginning of the year, the students would leave and go back to Horseheads and sit on the bus for quite a while,
AM
and then
coming
they would
back?
tell me.
Okay.
And it was both AM and PM, but now I've noticed the buses sit at BOCES for a bit. So say it's 11:15, then they sit there till about 11:30, then they go back to Horseheads, and then I think they're allowed off the bus at Horseheads at like 11:45, 11:50, whenever the
Okay.
next period starts. So I just wondered if, because that's kind of a waste of kids' time. So to me, I just want to,
Yeah,
I mean, it's just a lot of time.
I think in the beginning of the school year, there was, yeah, I agree, some issues with that. I didn't think it was that drastic, but certainly we can look at that. Mr. Donner's been great about providing us information about when our buses are there, and then Rich's drivers as well, to figure out how long we're waiting. I know the one in the schedule that's not substantial, is several minutes, is the end of the day when they come down PM, and they arrive down here, it's on the chart, and then they have to wait for the 2:35 dismissal. So there's like an 8 to 10 minute, I can't remember depending upon the day and how fast they get down here, sit time. I can also tell you that seeing those buses in action, they're fine with staying on the bus because they can use their cell phone. So we've seen that as well. Okay, but yes, oddity of the, yes. But regardless, still an issue to look at. I don't disagree with that. I didn't think it was that drastic, but certainly we can look into the details.
So I have quite a few questions and comments. My first comment that I want to say, and I did send this over in an email to the president and vice president, I appreciate this presentation. Being able to access it in advance, to be able to write down questions and to review material is really important. And tonight is the first time I'm getting to see this. And so I tried to write down my questions as quickly as possible, but having it in advance, especially when we talked about this a couple of months ago, would be a really big help. So starting from the beginning, you were talking about the 2017 and 2018 is when you guys started to talk about all of these different things in the models, and you talked about the specific committee that was charged to come up with the hours and the structure in the day for the 6-hour and the 40-minute day. And you do talk about how there's 14 teachers and 8 administrators. So after that committee, how many times was this brought forward to the rest of the teachers? Because you're talking about 8 years ago, so you're going to have new teachers that are brought on, different people with different observations. Like, how were people kept in the loop from then until now?
Yeah, so it was, there was a feedback loop over the course of that year and a half to monitor both from the district's point of view. I can speak only because I can't speak from the HCA side of what their feedback loops necessarily were, but to which we talked. Veteran teachers on it, well experienced. They were charged with a recommendation, like to make a recommendation. It was recognized that we had to do those things, right? Extend the day. What ideas do you have? How do we do this? Looking at research. So after which it was presented, and it was to go into contract negotiations after that. It wasn't something that, so it lay there as a recommendation to both the district and to the HGA to consider for future negotiations, to which it finally did come into fruition and made it into the contract to go live for 25-26. So yeah, there was a delay between that as a priority to make this move. 2018's change by New York State really was the impetus to get in the contract to make a change.
Okay, and when was the board informed of this is the model of the school day and this is what was going to happen? Were they ever in the feedback
I
loop?
can't speak to that.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Okay.
And I should clarify that. I do recall writing a board updates at that time. I just don't recall what they were, but certainly it was major work of the district, so I can speak to a board update that it was sent at fruition in late 2017.
Okay, because I do remember at some point in time when I was reading over the board jobs, what we're supposed to do is I believe we are supposed to set the hours and for the school day and to kind of have this overall as one of our board goals and to have, you know, the objective in mind, what's best for our students. And then I had another question about the movement to cut out recess you mentioned and to increase students.
Not cut out recess, standardized recess.
Standardized recess to make sure. Okay, and then I wanted to make a comment on that because my experience, my child's in 5th grade right now, and his schedule says lunch ends at 12:05 and recess begins at 12:05. So you can't possibly be in 2 places at one time. And it's just labeled on the back of his thing. So in the end, he's having a hard time with it. And the teacher who came tonight and spoke about the scheduling, well, for 5th grade, in his book, he's had this social studies paper for what he's supposed to learn for the states of America. And he said, I'm like, how come this is still in here? You have had this in here for 2 or 3 weeks now. Why isn't it completed? And he said, well, because we don't have time yet in social studies because there's not enough time in our day. So that is the feedback that I got, which is the same as what one of the teachers presented.
So I do want to speak to that. That was the conversation as we built the schedule to see where the science and social studies would fit into it with respect to the other work that was being done. There was even a model to which it specified social studies and science within it. I don't know if that was, maybe it's the final, because of teacher discretion on when you can do those things. Joe, I have to recall the models that were sent.
So for 5th grade, they have ELA and social studies combined.
I think this is an important point. We should make sure that we're clarifying.
So Katrina, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. 5th grade was your question, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so for 5th grade, the way their schedule was built in terms of, so they have 90-minute blocks where they have a math and science combined block, and also a 90-minute block where they have an ELA and social studies combined block. And part of the thinking from working with the building level administration there was wanting the ability for teachers to have flexibility within those blocks to know when is a day where I'm maybe giving a little more time to ELA versus social studies. Specific to that, to those content areas, there's been work on the curriculum side to the extent possible to start to integrate social studies into the ELA units as well. So there's some times where there's a clean match and that 90 minutes is really devoted there. There's others where it's not such a clean match and they may, based on where they are in their units, get more time to one or the other, but the 90-minute block together was to give the teachers flexibility to maintain the savings on that.
Okay, thank you. So I understand, you know, like the thought process and everything behind it, and then going through and seeing the execution and saying, okay, well now we have to shift and change things, or, you know, maybe this isn't quite working out exactly how we wanted to, and how do we help the students right now? Because I feel like that's, you know, like we're gonna have meetings and talk about things, but like we have to help them
right
now. We can't wait for this stuff to.
What are the drastic issues that that we should be looking into that need immediate change?
That would be a much longer conversation than I'm allowed to have with my 5 minutes, and I want to try to be able to get through some of my more questions.
Understood.
So when we were talking about the transportation, and you were saying the hour, that's just for PM runs only, correct? What you were showing us does not include a full day. So a student could have a half-hour run on either end, so that's a combined hour, correct? Of ride time per day. I'm looking at ride time per day, not AM, PM.
The data was just to the PM or just to the AM. It was not a combined time on the bus.
Okay, so when I look at this and I look at the picture as a whole, and I say, okay, we've got kids with a 6-hour and 40-minute school day, and it's longer for the intermediate school kids, correct?
Could you just make sure we have the data in front of us so we're not making assumptions of trusting information? So yeah, 316 minutes is the instructional day.
Okay, so they are essentially the same. So it's a 6-hour and 40-minute, and then if in the best case scenario, maybe a half hour on either end, if that's the quickest drop-off time. But I'm curious about like what the other half is. So let's say an hour. So that's like a 7-hour day. You add an hour, that is an 8-hour day. And so New York State labor laws for people who have an 8-hour day, they get an hour break in like 220 minutes. And these kids are getting, it looks like middle schoolers get a 20-minute break for lunch, and kids that are younger are getting a half-hour break for lunch. I feel like, in general, just looking at the big picture and not all of the details, this is a really not good thing for
I gotta
kids.
understand something. Yeah, there's a half-hour lunch, but our teachers are more than understanding it, know when students need particular breaks within the day, as Joe said, to adjust appropriately to meet their needs. So they get snacks, they have wiggle breaks, they do things other, that's the professionals that understand how to manage those students during that time. We trust them by just putting a block of time and saying, please use this appropriately given the needs of your student.
Okay, because the feedback that I get from my own children and from a lot of different parents on all of this and teachers is that this has been very difficult, especially for the younger kids. They are having a hard time focusing. They're having a hard time adjusting. My fifth grader, and I can only speak about my children, and I do because I'm honest, and it's not. Other parents come to me and tell me these things. My oldest son never told me he hated school. He loves his teacher. This year he tells me he doesn't like it for the first time, and that's heartbreaking.
Yes.
And then my youngest, he says the same thing, and it is not the staff, it is not anybody in this district, it is not the bus drivers, it's not the administration, it is nobody. It is, we made decisions, we thought they were going to pan out, it's not panning out. We have to pivot. How quick can we pivot to make sure that we're meeting the needs of these kids, because every year...
We are meeting the needs of the kids. I want to be careful in how we say that. You know, there is an instructional day. We have the average GST BOCES instructional day is 6 hours and 39 minutes. There are 3 districts that are outliers: Waverly, Corning Paint and Post, and Elmira at 620 each. So we are well within the realm. Even there's pre-K students in the area that goes 6 hours and 40 minutes. We do not do that. That is not appropriate. So we are well within the range of what's been established in many other districts at 6 hours and 40 minutes. So I want to be careful on this idea of a disservice to our students, because we have amazing people that do amazing work. So if there's very specific things we need to address, then let's do that.
It's so, like I said, this is in general, because here we are just in October, and this is the initial feedback that I'm getting from kids that I see, that I'm getting from my own kids. I'm being honest with you about the truth.
Yes.
It's not something...
Well, that's why I want details. I want to understand exactly what... It's horrible to hear that our parents have a bad experience. That's not something we want to hear at our level. We want to make sure we're addressing what those issues are, and at the building level, of course, first, and with the teacher. Because if the student's feeling that way, that's no good. We need to address that.
Right, and I think that what it is it's a compiling. Because yes, they get wiggle breaks. Yes, they get snack. Yes, they get other things. But when you're in lighting like this and everything is completely structured, and how much free time do they get to just go build blocks or interact with their peers where they're hanging out playing kitchen set? I mean, I remember my kindergarten days were spent dancing around
Yes,
with
of
100 people
course.
for like hours on end. You know, there was just so much more unstructured interaction where kids get to be
Yes.
kids, and I specifically ask my child, and he's very specific, and he tells me that these things, yeah, I gotta keep going on my questions. So it's
Curriculum-based play is
it's-
happening in our pre-K. It's wonderful work that Joe's been doing. Our kindergarten teachers, I believe, have gotten wind of it, are interested to see what that looks like. It's not just unstructured, but intentional play for social, emotional, and behavioral.
okay. So I think
Excuse
that
me, Ms. Umbarski.
yes.
You're at your 5, but you know, if
I
no
know.
one else has under our rules, you get 3 additional minutes, so unless anyone else has a comment they want to make, we can, okay, and then we can come back to you. So,
I think what's happening, like with the bus, so for an example, a family I know chose not to use the bus because their child would be on the bus at 6:45 or 7 or whatever, and their elementary day starts at 8:30. And then if they rode the bus home, they get home at 4:30, 4:45. So these kids are putting in longer days than what some of their parents work. And that's the combination of kids need time to not be structured and to be able to play. Even as 5th graders, even as 6th graders, even as 8th graders, they want to be out. So, I mean, the kids who come to us, they get home, whatever, 3:30. They don't even want to eat snack anymore. They just want to get outside and play. It's like, well, you need to drink milk. You need to do something. Well, I did that at school. You know, because it is different. It's not anything against the staff or what they're doing. It's the child that needs the playtime. It's the child that needs. It's different and it's long. I mean, going to school at 7:15 in the morning, their parents don't even have. To me, that's way too early. It's just, and I know that people work on all these things and everything, but, you know, as you said, we're in this business for doing what's best for all kids. And that's what we have to do. And yes, they need playing.
Yes.
Yes, they need play in 1st grade. I'm from the old school. I'm not 85 yet, but I remember Norma when she was in our district, but, you know, I mean, we like to have playtime when we're adults, but we're making these kids, it's a long day. It's nothing to do with the instruction, it's to do with the time that they're there.
I love this concept of this recess and play-based learning throughout our grade levels. That's not a this year issue. If we were to use the stats from last year and look at the beginning of the day and the end of the day and talk about those long runs, even within the shorter day last year, they were on the bus longer. We just switched off some busing for instructional, to which they have the opportunity for educators to do play-based. So I think there's an opportunity, and I love it, Sue, of, play-based, just being kids and learning from being kids in the social, emotional, and behavioral.
But you hear your staff saying that we're losing instructional time in the way it's set up, and why is that? I mean, when we were presented that we got to change the times because of the BOCES kids, they needed, what we were presented didn't work, didn't happen. And, you know, we were told that BOCES was it would be better for the BOCES kids, and as it turned out, it's not. So,
You switch the problem from A to B.
right, so we have issues really that we have to address that's affecting our kids, that is affecting our staff. Because, you know, I heard from another grade level, not 4th, younger, and I try to teach math after lunch, and it takes the kids 15 minutes to go to the bathroom. Then when I'm trying to teach them math, they're done. They can't even focus because it's 1:30 in the afternoon, and they're done. They're done. And that's a tough subject. It can't be done. You need to learn math.
Well, they're all tough subjects, and it all depends on the kid, right? So I do believe that emphasizing the intention. We didn't have this win block time to address the needs of each individual child based on their own data sets. That hasn't existed universally prior in this district. That's a huge win. I'm not sure it's been realized. You see what that looks like in action and what we're trying to accomplish there with, if a child is struggling in a particular area, there's an opportunity for, engagement or enrichment in what they're doing. That's a key part of the schedule that had not existed to the extent it has done now. It's academically appropriate, and it also has the behavioral and social emotional aspects too. That win block is certainly something that we should be celebrating and figuring out how do we use that best.
My other question too was, I've heard that library used to have extra programs, K through 4, and art used to have enrichment times, but because of the 4-day cycle, the art and the music aren't able to do that this year.
So yeah, there was, it wasn't universal, it wasn't in every building.
Okay.
So that was a topic of concern. In speaking with the art department chair last year, there was a request to see could we add an art teacher to the elementary to do enrichment across and get some of those programs. The problem was it was only found in one elementary at the time, and what would it look like to extend. Yes, we have had conversations with the librarians and what their load looks like and how that's been different. Again, meeting with department chairs and or feedback loops of what their support needs to look like, the library clerk and other things are going to be part of our budget conversation, no doubt, to make sure they're supported. So it's on the radar.
Okay, because those are issues that I know with the 4-day cycle.
We can't hear you.
Oh, okay. With the 4-day cycle, that seems to be an issue too with our end. Way back in the day, we used to have a gateways program. I think that was math.
All of them.
Is it difficult to change your 4-day cycle to a 5-day cycle or
Yes.
a 6-day cycle?
Yes.
So how did we come up with a 4-day cycle versus a 6-day?
It was to how many different, you wanted to offer PE every other day. You wanted to optimize your traveling teachers. So in a 5-day schedule, offering the PE every day kind of starts to mess up with related areas and special area teachers and those that travel between buildings. 5-day cycle is kind of difficult. You lose your Mondays often for breaks. So these were all talking 6-day cycle and a continuation of that and what that would look like was also discussed 3-4 years ago during some contract negotiations, if not longer. So the 4-day was landed as the best way to approach the changes that we were seeking to ensure that core instruction time. You have to remember that prior, a student would would be pulled constantly from initial core instruction to attend or go to get RTI support or go to resource room. That's what used to happen in this district because the time was limited. You had to pull from somewhere. So you're pulling a student that needs help in just initial instruction. You're saying, yeah, we know you're doing math right now, but we're going to pull you out to resource room to review the stuff that you're now additionally missing. It didn't make sense. The extended day and the wind block and offering a rotation in such a way with the 4-day allowed for this, allowed to address students better. I can't emphasize that enough. I hope next Tuesday you're all going to join us and we'll take a look at some of this in action and what we're trying to accomplish and what the end goal, what the vision of this MTS work is in Tier 1. We don't want to pull students out of core instruction. We need to protect that. We need to have our educators working with students and then identifying the help that they need and supports in the wind block. And enrichment, as you referred to earlier, opportunities to excel their learning. Previous model didn't open ourselves to that. We were pulling kids out of initial instruction to do remediation. It didn't make sense.
You want to come back here?
Two out of my 3 children were in RTI and it never interfered with their regular classes.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, I think Warren still wants to talk first.
Go ahead, Mr. Conklin.
I would just like if the presentation by the Big Flats grade school teacher is accurate and there's a loss of science time in the classroom and there's a loss of social studies time in the classroom, then I think you should look at it. And I don't need a response, I just am concerned in today's world if they're not getting science and they're not getting social studies, but they're getting other things. I don't know what it is, but it should be looked at.
No. Former social studies teacher myself, I agree.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
And then I just thought about this, and it's not to throw anybody under the bus, but a lot of times my one son, because he is also in the RTI programs, and he did get pulled in elementary school, but this year he wants to be in wind block because wind block is when he gets to play on the computer and do things on the computer, which is fine, but I'm also a parent who is like, I want to limit the amount of time that you're on a computer, and I want to make sure that you are doing X, Y, Z. So there's that. So I mean, I guess to me, I don't want to keep asking questions back and forth because that's not, tonight isn't going to be able to solve anything, but I think that what we need to have happen is, even in all of these conversations that, you were talking about with curriculum and everything else, I didn't ever hear that parent feedback was involved, because what a kid comes home and tells their parent is important, and what parents see within their kids and their learning ability and what they're able to achieve is important, is feedback to be able to give. Because it's just a conversation of, okay, everybody's here because we all want to do better and we need to help and we're going to improve things. That's our goal. We all care about that the most. And then when I'm still confused about the PE and the push for PE to replace recess. So if we didn't have the extra PE instruction, would they just have recess instead?
No, it wasn't, that's not, no. PE was previously not, we didn't have enough PE time in our schedule. We added the additional PE teacher in our elementaries and put it on the rotation to allow to meet the PE requirements of New York State, which we weren't meeting prior. Recess still occurs.
Did recess ever count towards that PE requirement?
I think at some point there was an acronym for it when I first started. I don't remember what it was called. What was that called? It was Kids of Action?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I just kicked it back 10 years, sorry. There was a program to which it was overseen by PE teachers or something that worked out with New York State. That fell by the wayside. This allowed us to ensure we're meeting the requirements and also provide recess, ensuring recess across the board.
Okay, and so, like I said, I think that I think we need to look at this. I think we need to have board members on it. I think we need to figure out some sort of a way that we have better communication between all of the branches to come up with a solution. Because what I hear from teachers and staff is a drastically different picture than what I hear from administration, and is also different from what I hear from parents. And nobody's at fault. Like I said, nobody, it's hard when you're working hard and you feel like somebody's attacking you. I don't think anybody's attacking anybody. I think we're all like, everybody had the best intentions. Things are trying to work out.
So you can understand.
Right. We need to pivot. We need to make some changes. We have to do it quickly because, especially for intermediate school kids right now, my heart goes out to them the most because they lost kindergarten and first grade. They lost their foundational skills. Nobody's fault that there was a pandemic, but they lost that. And now they're struggling again. And it's somehow they got the earliest time slot, which nobody really knew was going on. And nobody really knew that it was going to be a two-tier system instead of a three-tier system. And that communication, it didn't happen because I'm not sure why. So we need to fix that. And that's what I think we need to do going forward so that we can get into the specifics. And I don't know if that means that we have a committee that sits down and does this. I don't know the exact solution, but I know that it can't be tabled, it can't be put off anymore. Action needs to take place, and it has to happen quickly. And I think because everybody cares so much about all of the kids in the district, I think it can happen because everybody's heart is in the right place.
Thank you. Any other final comments before we move on to the agenda? I just will say that I'm very thankful for the presentation. I know a lot of work went into putting that together, and so thanks to the team that did that. Thank you very much. It is true we're only 6 weeks in, and already we have seen improvements being made in things like Big Flats, Ridge Road, pick up and drop off, the BOCES time as we talked about. And it's clear to me that everyone's working to try to make improvements, and particularly Rich, thank you for what you said about the transportation and the really significant progress there, and how you've empowered your team to feel energized and to make improvements. All of that is a really positive thing. So I know we have more work to do, as was laid out in the presentation, but thank you for the time this evening and sharing what you did. So with that, we'll move to our next item in the agenda, which would be, is there anything, Mr. Gillett, you have in lieu of?
Yes, Terry has something.
Okay. So this would be item 6, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Douglas is away at a funeral, so we'll have Ms. Clark.
Thank you. So Tom asked me to give some comments. I'd like to be here to do the process of the nature of his family.
There you
Thank
go.
you. He wasn't able to be here tonight. So this year has brought with it a series of difficult decisions, changes to school start times, end times, the closure of one of our elementary schools, and the reality of a tight budget that has forced us to all stretch resources further than ever before. These were not easy choices and have understandably stirred strong emotions across our community. Yet through it all, I've witnessed your unwavering commitment to doing what's best for our students. You've listened, you've debated, you've made decisions with care and courage. You've faced this with grace and remained focused on the long-term health and sustainability of our district. We thank you for showing up, for staying engaged. Your service is deeply personal. It affects families, teachers, staff, and most importantly, the children you're here to support. Thank you for your dedication, your time, and your heart. And then now, wanted to point out what our lovely students have provided. There are many cards. I don't know if you guys can see the banner that some of our students made, thanking you. I hope you've gotten the opportunity to read some of the cards because they're lovely. You'll also see each one of you got a magnet, and Haley was in communication with our students and asked them to provide a word that they thought of when thinking of the board. So those are all student-driven words on their magnets. You'll also find on the back thing here, that basket was from Gardner Road. You all have certificates for your service and dedication. You know, it can't be an easy job, but we certainly are appreciative and thankful that you show up each and every day. The book that's there, I believe was mentioned through the board. It's the Anxious Generation. And again, thank you so much for everything you guys do. I know it can't be easy sometimes, but we all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. This is best part of being a board member right here. I mean it. Okay, so we will move to the next item on the agenda, finance items for action. And I'm going to need my glasses. There's no audit committee report. So then we have an action vote on item 7.03 through 7.11. Is there a motion? Comments, questions, discussion on the motion? Ms. Zambarski?
Yes, I just had some questions on the change orders. 7-11. What is the AV storage split system?
Could you explain where you're reading that from so I know where to reference?
The highlighted portions on the change order log. When you scroll down in the change order log, it was an owner request to switch the AV storage split system.
Yep, so page 3 under Big Flats, correct?
Yes, if that's under Big Flats, it's cut off at the top. If that's a continuation from there, I don't know.
So yes, this is a cooling system that was put into a storage closet that holds a host of AV equipment. The equipment within this closet
due to the quantity of equipment in this closet was generating more heat than anticipated. So to protect that equipment in this closet, a split unit was installed per the owner's request.
Okay, and that is is that similar for the second $2,200 charge? Because there was two of them.
The one towards the bottom that says services not provided.
It's on page, I think it's page 4.
Oh, the 2200?
Yes.
Yes, that's related, that's for the control systems.
That is the same one. Okay, and then the Area 1 lighting for that $13,000, what was that for? It was an omission, I believe.
Yes, so this was to tie in some existing lighting in the high school gym. So the lighting where the existing corridor is there, where the existing structure was torn down, to tie the lighting back in. There was an issue with the panel to tie that lighting back in, so there's some extra work that had to be done to tie the lighting back into the corridor. So yes, the O is an omission in the design work to tie that lighting back in.
So I have a question, like for when these omissions happen,
Yes.
does it always just fall on us to cover it? Like if the engine, if they omitted it and it's not really 100% our fault, do they ever help cover some of that cost?
It depends. So this is work that would have had to be done anyways to tie this lighting in. So it would have been in the drawing at one point or another to have this work done. It was caught in the scope of the construction. So once it was realized that this component was missing in the drawings, the group pivoted, came to a decision on how to solve it, and the work proceeded with this change order. So the work would have had to proceed one way or another. The conversations really come into play with when they're coded as errors as far as who's going to cover the cost. So those are pretty infrequent.
Okay. And then I had my final question on the owner request for the Area C floor finishes. I believe it's page 9.
So this is at Ridge Road. This is to make the flooring match in the existing, what's called Area B, so the existing center of the Ridge Road footprint to, or what was the center of the Ridge Road footprint to the north wing of the Ridge Road footprint where the stack is now. Owner requests to have the flooring match for a better finish. So it's terrazzo flooring.
So if we chose not to do that, what would happen?
The flooring would not match for a better house. So with a
We're talking about the entrance.
yes, so the entrance to the
Yeah, there was work done in connecting the two to the K wing and off to the other wing. Excuse me, off to the other wing. And B wing, thank you. And when the decision was made on the wall that's going to go where the gym is and the music room, there was a floor and some floor base and a transition that went from the current terrazzo to the new terrazzo. We did this at parts of the high school as well, where we cut out spaces to better match it. Now is the time to do it, because once we put some walls up, it's going to be a long time before we can touch that particular area, if I recall correctly. So it was a matter of, now's the time to make the match, otherwise it's going to be like that for quite some time until that particular corner will be addressed. Like I said, that wasn't likely to happen anytime soon.
a long time or better given the scope of the work that's being done.
can I just add on to that for a second? So when we're looking at these additions, we also have subtractions along the way that play into either the monies that are there or part of our contingency budget that we put aside for issues such as this. So that contingency ebbs and flows depending on the scope of the work that's being done of now that we have the walls apart or this apart or that apart, we decide we don't need this anymore, so that money goes back in, and we do need this unforeseen thing, it goes in. So that account oftentimes ebbs and flows. So my question would be, where is that contingency budget now? And that may not be something you can answer right now, but you know, where are we with the usage of funds for that?
Well, I can't answer it completely right now. The project is progressing on time and on budget. It's actually performing very well. We're expecting it to come in all this hopefully under budget. So we don't take these decisions lightly when we look at making decisions like this with a $22,000 change order. We do look at the funds available, we look at the futuring of the project to make sure that it is a reasonable decision to make.
So in making that decision, what you're saying is that you do not have a concern that contingency budget is coming, we're coming too close to being, you know, using all of those funds. So we're in a good place financially with contingency budget, even though you don't know the number off the top of your head, and this is part of the ebb and flow of these projects.
Yes, that is correct.
Mr. Conklin?
So I'd just like to make two comments. Number one, on the flooring. I think the real issue is, do you do it right the first time or do you not do it properly? And unfortunately, this is going to sound really harsh, but in my experience here in Horseheads, for years, we squeezed a dime to get 4 nickels out of it. And now we're trying to do it properly, and I think you walk through these buildings that have been completed, and they're magnificent. So these are the people we hired to give us their professional opinion, and I don't think they've disappointed us in any construction I've seen. So the question is fair, but I think the real issue is, do you want to do it right or don't you? And as for the contingency issues, every building, we never exceeded the contingency budgets in construction. And as a matter of fact, there was money left over from projects that allowed us to buy alternates for the Ridge Road project. So the contingencies have not been a concern to date. And from our last meeting, we're nowhere near having a problem and a concern about contingencies on either the Ridge Road project or the high school gymnasium project.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that for the benefit of the board. Having served on the Facilities and Grounds Committee for many years, and I know some other folks have too, we actually get to see that contingency reconciliation in that meeting setting, and that's what Mr. Conklin's referring to. And I've stated to Dr. Douglas, I think it would be helpful if the full board, as part of these change order logs, also saw that roll up and that compared to the overall budget, so that we have the context in which we see this spending occurring, that overall is well within the budget and within the contingency. So it's my understanding that they're working on a way to better portray that, and I'll remind Dr. Douglas of that. So hopefully we'll see in the next board meeting something that's a little bit more in depth, and we'll answer some of these questions proactively. Are there other questions or discussion points on the motion pending? So call for a vote. All those in favor of 7.03 through 7.11, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions?
I'm abstaining on 7.11 because I do feel like we should be having that information so we can get a full picture before we make a vote on it. That's why I'm choosing to abstain. From 7.11 only, everything else is a yes.
Okay, thank you. So with that, the motion carries. And we will move to item 8, personnel items for action. We have 8.02, the HR recommendations for action. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Comments, questions on the motion? Go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to recognize the teaching assistant who's going to be retiring in April. Thank her for her years of service to our district, and hopefully she has a wonderful retirement. Susan Diario DeFazzi.
Here. Any other items? Okay.
I was just noticing under section C, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 transportation resignations. 2 of those are people who were just starting to drive. 3 of them, 1 of them is a dispatch, and 3 are regular drivers. And then when you go further down, there is an additional driver who is going out on leave. So I believe that makes 8. Having been a former bus driver, I feel like that's pretty significant. So I'm a little concerned about that. I kind of feel like when you see that number of resignations and where we are time-wise, that could be telling of morale maybe within an area possibly, or I mean, I feel like when it's that many, we should definitely be getting some sort of an exit survey to find out the reasoning behind it, because that's a lot of drivers. Trying to get bus drivers is a hard thing. That's a lot. That's a big number. So that was my concern that I wanted to bring up on that.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, call for a vote. All those in favor of 8.02 say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Item 9, appointment of officer for action. We have 9.02, appointing Stacy McCauley as deputy treasurer. Get my computer there. The action that's recommended is that the Board of Education appoint Stacy McCauley as deputy treasurer for 2025 through 2026. Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
Thank you. Comments or questions on the motion? Call for a vote. All those in favor of 9.02 say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 10, miscellaneous items for action. We have 4, item 10.02 through 10.05 for action. Is there a motion? Okay. Comments or questions on the pending motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of 10.02 through 10.05 say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Moving to item 11, board policies. First, we will start with the policy committee report from the October 2nd meeting. Mr. Conklin?
Yes, so we have 2 first readings and 1 second reading, and I wanted to take a couple minutes and talk about policy 6231, which is Title I PSEN Programs and Services. The committee recommended to totally delete that policy, and it's there that it says be deleted. It its entirety because it's not required by law and because of advice and counsel. But I think more importantly than those two issues is PSEN is not a vocabulary word we even use anymore. That word was around when I started teaching in 1976, and it went out of vogue maybe in the late 80s, early 90s. All of the legal references in the policy are from 1987. So all of the pupils with special educational needs, the law has dramatically changed since 1987. So the policy is just purely outdated. So that, I think, is the more important reason that it should be deleted in its entirety, and that was the conclusion of the committee.
Thank you very much. So in terms of the agenda, there's one policy that has come up for second reading and therefore approval. That's 11.03. So we'll first deal with that, and then there are two for, as Mr. Compton just made reference to, first reading for discussion but not action. So is there a motion for the approval of the proposed changes to BOE Policy 6230, federal funds, and 1103? Okay. Comments or questions on the proposed changes? Fran?
I just want to say that I'm voting no to those changes on 11.03 because I had stated that at the last meeting. I didn't think that we should delete the whole policy.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so call for a vote on 11.03. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. We have, any opposed, say nay.
No.
Any abstentions? Okay. Well, we have 5 yes votes, 1 no, and 1 abstention, so that will carry. Board policies for first reading, no action. Mr. Compton just explained specifically the 1201 edits, but are there any questions or comments from board members for the consideration of the policy committee? Ms. Zanvarsky?
Yes, I understand what Warren is saying about the Title I and the PSEN, and maybe that's not language that you are that you use, but I feel like Title I is something that's still around, so maybe we should have a policy that is addressing Title I and how that functions. Am I incorrect on that? Doesn't Title I still exist?
Yes, it's found in another policy. And the way we spend it is dictated by and has been audited in 2017. The language here is not applicable. We would follow what, through our New York State audit, we use Title I funds. So there is a separate policy, I believe, on Title funds.
Okay, I'd like to know exactly where that policy is so I can review that.
That
Just so everybody heard 1900?
Any other comments or questions for the consideration of the policy committee? Okay. Let's move to the next item on the agenda, which would be item 13, the board president's report. And so there are several actual agenda items we'll take separately here. First, just a couple of comments from me. And we already said this, but again, thank you very much to everyone for the Board of Education recognition cards and all the other things, and it is incredibly appreciated. Those are extremely sweet and touching, so thank you for that. I wanted to mention that I do appreciate we've had some members of the community who have utilized the Horseheads Board of Education mailbox I talked about in a prior meeting, and So those emails all get read. There are several that are pending for, it's been my goal to, because as the president, I'm the sort of spokesperson to respond to them on behalf of the board. I've been trying to do that on a weekly basis. I was out of town for work 2 days this week, and there's a couple I still need to get to, so I apologize for the responses being a little bit slow, but I want everyone to know that they are read and responded to as reasonably quickly as possible. There were a couple that related to the petition that was delivered to the board in the last meeting, and I just wanted to comment on that briefly. That was appreciated, and that's something that was shared with the board, and we have as a point of reference as we consider where we are thus far this year with these changes and what additional actions may need to be taken. There was some reference in emails received that suggested, at least as I read them, that the board had some kind of legal obligation to take action because we had received a petition. And I just want to clarify that that's not the case. I mean, of course, as a board, we're interested in what the community thinks. And so that represents the viewpoint of those who signed the petition, and certainly that's good and information to have, as well as all the other information from various stakeholders that we take in. And so I'm not for a second suggesting it's not something that I think that we would consider, but it also only represents 10% or less of the potential population, the school population, right? So what are the views of the other 90%? And that's our goal, is to try to hear from other people and get as much input as we can as we consider what we may do. So rest assured that is something that we have taken in, as well as the other input that we receive. But there's no formal sort of legal requirement for the board to act on it, and to the extent anyone had that, thinks that that's the case, I'm happy to talk with them further, but I wanted to clarify that because there was, I think, some misconception in the emails that I saw. Okay, so then I'm going to move to 1302, Board of Education goals. We talked about this in our last meeting. We had an initial draft of our board goals for the year. These were sent out to the board members by email for their consideration over the last couple of weeks, and it's my understanding, I think, that there was no additional feedback received. So I'd like to see if we can agree upon these this evening. But first, I open it up if there is discussion that anyone has at this point on the draft that's contained in the public content section of 1302. Go ahead.
Yes, so I do think that, number one, the focus educational, the presentations on the performance level of the students. So I'd like to kind of shift that presentation word, right? Because we get presented information, but we as the board aren't necessarily having a lot of discussion about the performance and what we want specifically to happen and the direction we'd like to see things go. And I think that that's very important because we are the community's voice for what they need for their kids, and I think that it should be more geared towards what we need to do about performance levels, where are we having assessments, how do we know that we are effectively getting correct feedback, what are those tools that we're using, how do we, I feel like that has to be, like the way that we get presented things and then the timing of how we get stuff, it makes it very difficult to actually ever accomplish anything, I guess, is what, or change things, or like really have like meaningful dialogue, because it feels very one-sided, if that makes sense. So I feel like that should be shifted. We want the performance levels, but we need more than just, we need to have like a work session, maybe, is what I'm thinking, not just a presentation, like a work session where we really sit down for a couple of hours and look at, this is how things are managed. This is how we administer things, and have like being able to have real dialogue back and forth, being able to ask questions in real time. You know, I think that has to be more of a work session than a presentation, if that makes sense.
Well, I would suggest, if you look at goal number 2, it talks about conducting additional retreats during the school year. One of those could focus on what you're talking about.
But with retreats, we could be losing other feedback. So like, you know, tonight we got feedback from staff directly. And when you have, well, work sessions, you may not always have dialogue back and forth, but it's trying to bring more people to the table, or like make people aware of the conversations we're having so that they can see exactly what it is. And the more specific questions, you know, in the back and forth, because then they can see like, oh yes, that specific question was asked and it was answered in this way, and this is what we're doing, and they can see that.
Okay, do you have some specific language you'd like to see? This has been, you know, over a month now that we've had this draft out for feedback, and so do you have some specific wording you'd like to see reflected in number 1 that you want to offer? Or if we're not ready to approve these this evening because you need more time for that, I suppose we can table it, but you know, we're trying to move to where we can. And I'll just add, I mean, these are overarching goals, right? Like within the scope of a goal, we could then talk and say we want to drill down and do A, B, and C. So it's not like this somehow boxes us in. It's setting overarching goals that we then have the ability to flesh out as the year goes on. But frankly, I'm not sure exactly how you want to modify that based on what you're saying.
No, I just wanted to be able to give you the feedback with like how I'd like to see us working through that. So I would say, yes, I agree with this goal. I think that student performance is really important, but the functionality of how we work through the discussions and things like that, I feel like, you know, it could still be a presentation, but it can shift. Does that make sense?
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you were wanting to change it, but you're just
No.
clarifying what you think the presentation should actually, how it should function, how it should be structured. Okay, thank you. Yes, please, Erin.
Katrina, if I'm hearing what you're saying, what I think possibly you might be asking for is like an interactive data presentation. So are you talking about like us receiving data prior, being able to prepare questions, the team presents to us, and then we can present questions that we have during that time? So are you talking about more of an interactive presentation?
Yes, I would definitely like to have a more interactive, so like, you know, tonight it was kind of hard because we're writing down our questions as they're moving through the slides. So to be able to have our questions that we can write out in advance, or like being able to have more of a back and forth and not being constrained to our 8 minutes of discussion, because student performance is a really big deal to me.
So I'm just trying to think of language for this. So focus educational Board of Education presentations on, you know, I think what you're looking for is data with interactive review.
Maybe. I mean, I'm okay with how this is. I'm okay with how this is, like Dan said. I'm okay with this. This is the big goal, and then we can still talk about like more like what's going to happen. But I just wanted to bring that forward because we're talking about it now. Sometimes after we have a meeting, I forget. I go home and I don't send my stuff over, and you know. So that's why I'm just talking about it.
So you're good with the language of the goal. You're looking for process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very helpful clarification. Thank you. Are there other goals or discussion that folks would like to have, board members would like to have on what we have in front of us as the draft? Is there, dare I say, a motion to approve the goals? Any other comments or questions on the draft? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Okay, great, thank you. I honestly appreciate the input, and I will, we'll finalize these, and then we can flesh it out and make sure that we fulfill the goals, and the implementation guidance is very helpful. Thank you. So, is there air conditioning on right now? I don't know. I think it's all computerized. So the next item under the President's Report, 1303, it's just labeled as board communication, but let me explain what this is. So I referenced earlier the board mailbox that we created and put on the outward-facing website that allows anyone to send an email to that mailbox, and then it comes to all the board members simultaneously. And then, as I explained, to avoid open meeting law issues, we don't get into a back and forth, but the board president can respond accordingly. There was discussion at the last board meeting. Ms. Sheehan brought forward that she had raised previously and still wanted to discuss whether, in addition to that, should each board member here, we have a horseheadsdistrict.com email address that gets utilized for our weekly updates and other board-related communication. And the question was, should each member's Horseheads address also be available under their name to the extent anyone in the public would want to utilize that? So, because there was a request to discuss that, I wanted to make sure it was on the agenda for discussion. So, do you want to sort of, since you had asked for it, would you like to say anything in favor of or speak to the issue? Okay.
Thank you, Dan. I still think we should have our own individual email, obviously the Horseheads District, available for the public if they want to individually email us. And I do agree with Dan being the one responding, where we would forward our emails so everyone can see them, and then still have Dan respond, but for the public to be able to access us as individuals, and then obviously pass information along. I think that's important. Thank you.
So I realized there is a board policy 2710, I believe, that talks about BOE use of email. I made a note of that. Yeah. 2710, board use of email. So I think to the extent the board is interested in doing this, we could have a motion to modify policy 2710 to include posting the board members' individual district emails on the Board of Education district website. Is that the motion in line with your desire? Okay. Does someone want to make that motion?
I'd like to make the motion.
Is there a second? Okay, comments, question, discussion on the motion? Please.
So I'm not sure I understand that a community member would feel comfortable emailing an individual board member, and then the board member, from what I'm hearing, must, not may, must forward it to the the board president, and then the board president responds. So if we had what we currently have, which is a board mailbox, the argument that I heard last meeting was members of the public would be afraid, or would be, I don't know if afraid is the right word, but would be unwilling to communicate to a collective mailbox, but they would be more than willing to communicate with an individual person on the board. And I guess my question is if the issue was that important to the individual in the community, they would drop an important issue if they were forced to send it to a community mailbox versus an individual mailbox. I find that hard to believe. If it's an important issue, and I don't understand what the purpose of the intermediary step is. An email goes to an individual board member who must then send it to the president and all other board members. And the individual board member can't respond. So I doesn't seem to be an important intermediary step when we're to get the information to us.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. Does anyone else want to speak on the motion?
I think sending it, sometimes a person might be able to send it to Dan because he knows Dan. They might send it to you, Warren, because they know you. They might send it to me because they know me. And then it goes to the board president. It's just a way of saying to the community who elected us, yeah, if you have a concern, reach out to us. And no, we can't respond, we're not going to respond, we're going to send it to the president, but I don't think it's a bad thing to have all of our individual contacts up there. It's not, I know other districts do it, and I don't think it's a bad thing that people can contact us directly. I mean, if we're out in the public, they're going to come up to us and say something to us. They do. If they see us, they come up and say something to us. So I don't think it's a bad thing to put it out there. But I guess it's just a preference of, and we haven't done this before. But in our mailboxes, are they all set up the same way? Like everybody has the folders in their mailboxes?
Of this, the board general address?
Yes.
Yes, should be.
Okay. It's not just you and me or everybody has?
No, it's all, everyone has equal access. I
Okay.
think it's just who can respond. The system doesn't allow everyone to respond.
Right. I mean, I didn't get it, my board email worked until last week. So I didn't get to, I mean, I've read them now, I've caught up, but I didn't have them.
Okay.
So, but I do know other places have, their emails out there. I'm not opposed to having my email put out there.
Anyone else? Matt, please go ahead.
I think we're just talking about general sentiment and trust with the community. If we're going to talk about, you can email us at any time, and you should just email us at any time, and we will be responsible board members and forward it to the proper authorities to make sure it gets where it needs to go. But if we're talking about community members who often say, we can't email you if we want to, and we should. So I think you should. I mean, I get it's an extra step and it is a little redundant, and I agree with you, Warren, in that respect. But if we're just talking about the general trustworthiness of the community and trusting us as their representatives, elected representatives, see a problem with it, personally, professionally.
Others? Trainer?
Yeah, so I'm in favor because I agree too. It might seem like it's a small thing, but I think that sometimes people do just want to reach out to you because they know you and they feel comfortable, and they know that you're going to handle the situation and let the board president know, and then the president is going to be able to make determinations on how to manage and respond to the issue. But also talking about that folder, how the folder thing works, because when I did get in the email, I think that we should have some training. This might sound silly, on how to use the folders, because I was like, these emails are disappearing, and where'd that email go? Because I was reading, I saw there was an email, and then I didn't get to read it, so then I went to go try to read it, and then it wasn't there, and I'm like, what? And then I was like, oh, there's different folders, because I don't do that stuff. I know it sounds silly, But in the future, there could be a board member like me, and we may not all be here, so maybe we should make sure that we put that somewhere to help people understand how the email process works, and like the board president is gonna put them, because I like that idea of, okay, I've read this one, check. I get the processing of it, and it makes sense. I just didn't know what was happening.
Okay. Can I just, yeah, I'm happy to go into more detail, but essentially, just in order to make sure that we are responding to Terry and I on a weekly basis, are moving them to either a, have responded to folder or to no response needed folder. We actually get quite a bit of spam to this mailbox. And so the intent is though not to delete them so that they're still available. It's just a way of tracking whether or not they've been addressed. But sorry that I didn't explain that. I deal with email quite a bit, so.
Well, I'm going to say something that maybe has a little bit of a different perspective, but when we're talking about transparency, I actually feel it's a lack of transparency to have a question from the public come to just one board member and then go to Dan to decide if we see it or not, or if that's the process. I find that to be derisive between us. I feel that as a board, we act as a collective. So if something's going to come to us, it should come to us as the board rather than to an individual email. Because then it's like, oh, Erin got an email, she knows something that, Kara and Katrina and Matt don't know right now. And I see it as a leveling, that if it's a collective email, we are a collective board, it comes to us collectively for our review. We can then collectively have conversation, as need be when the time arises, and know all of that information at the same time. So I would not be for us having our individual emails out there because I like the idea of having a collective email where we're all on the same page at the same time.
Yes, of course.
First, Ann, I just want to thank you for your time because just to explain more, Warren, a couple months ago when I brought this up, maybe 2 months ago, we didn't even have a board email where we could get email from the public, and then the thought was there where we had the general. I think maybe, Erin, you might have misunderstood. I think everyone should see emails that we all individually get, absolutely, but then we just know we don't respond. That our board president is one responding. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
And maybe in other school districts, when they send an individual's email to a board member, would it go to we have a collective, would it go to that person too? Like, would it be attached, like my email attached to the one we have now?
I think that would just be made, could probably set up different ways that,
Right.
I'm not sure.
I mean, in the end, everybody would see it. I just wondered if it would, because I'm not in the.
Sue, just so I can understand that if we discuss this further, the logistics. So the suggestion, if it's there and it says your name and they want to click on it, somehow that message goes to you, but also at the same time is sent to other board members. Is that, or to the generic address?
Right, that's what I
But
wonder if that's how.
So now it's out there that it's known it's being sent to that, as well as, because we're talking about an open session right now. So there's yes, we could do that, but it would become apparent on the CC line or some other way that, oh yeah, someone else is getting this.
I think it should just be individual. We're all responsible enough to pass it, whatever is appropriate.
Well, the motion is individual, so.
Most of it, much.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wondered, let's save a step for the end.
I think, okay.
But there are, I have talked to a couple of other board members at other boards, and I asked them how they did it, they do things, and they have both. They have their individual and the collective, and they said, we have it, and it's not super active. I mean, it's been active for us lately because there's more concern. And they're like, sometimes it's really active and sometimes it's like not that active. But it's just a, you know, the olive branch of, we're here, communicate with us any way that you feel comfortable, and then we all, you know, we're all going to bring it to the table. So they have both. A lot of places have both.
Thank you. I think everyone has been heard on the motion. I'll just offer my comments briefly. I think I'm glad we had the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you for asking for it to be on the agenda. I respectfully tend to agree with Ms. Chabon. I think that as board members, you know, one of the things that's drilled into our heads is we only have any kind of authority or role when we sit as a board. You know, individually we have no authority or role, and so I like the idea of to the extent someone wants to communicate, that it goes to the board as a whole. Now, I'm not saying I have complete faith that if it went to one individual board member, we could have a process for forwarding it on, but it just seems to me that is kind of was stated, just a multi-step duplicative process of what we're trying to achieve, which is allowing the full board to be able to receive input from the community. So for that reason, I would be in favor of maintaining what we currently have, unless and until we realize that it's not adequate for some reason, but it doesn't seem to me to be the case at this point. So with that, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of modifying the policy as we discussed to include individual email addresses on the Horseheads District website, say aye. We can vote on it again. Well, it fails anyway. So I mean, if there are 4 in favor, then it doesn't carry because you need 5. But we can certainly talk about it again at the next meeting. That's totally fine with me. So, okay, let's move then. 1304, the last item under the board president's report. It's labeled association comments, and this is in response to the comments that Mr. Finity on behalf of the HCA and other bargaining units in the district brought forward at the last meeting, requesting whether the board would consider having some regular time on the board's agenda to receive reports from bargaining unit leadership. And so there was a request from several board members to have this on the agenda for discussion, so I wanted to make sure to do that. So I would open it up to anyone who wants to speak on this issue, and then we can see if there's support for a motion, one way or the other. So does anyone want to be recognized on this question? Ms. Chabon?
I am absolutely in favor of our teachers and all of the other committees being able to approach and have conversation with the board. I think it was shared with us that there's a number of 21 associations, is that it? 10? So 13 groups of individual employees, 10 of them that are recognized as bargaining units, 3 that are not, but still we're talking about 13 different groups. Where did I get 21 from? Anyway, 13 different groups. So as I was ruminating on this and thinking about it, I would like to share that I think this is a wonderful idea. I think that I would like to see a policy surrounding that would bring this to fruition, in saying that there needs to be protocols and regulations, of course, as part of this. And so that we're able to represent all voices that may want to share, and I would like to state that I think it's appropriate, just as we as a board have items that are put on the agenda for discussion under each bullet point, I think it would also be appropriate for these groups to submit their bulleted agenda items of topics that they would like to share during this time, with a cutoff date prior to our meeting. So we generally, as a board, Dan, and Sue and the individual board members that contribute per month, have these conversations about a week prior to our board meetings to establish an agenda for nights such as this. So my thought would be that the different groups, 13 representatives of each group, could funnel their concepts and their ideas, and maybe we don't have anybody for a given month, maybe we have a few people for each month, but they would funnel their agenda topics through to Terry, that would then be combined and shared over to Dan and Sue as part of the agenda creating process, but it would need to be timely, right? So at that agenda meeting creation time, those requests would be here. And then of course there would need to be some kind of a time limit. I mean, as we've seen, our representation can come to public open time. However, if there is somebody from each one of those groups coming every single time, as we, as part of discussion, they could essentially take over the public comment section, right, in timeliness of that. So I think this would be a great addition to that, to allow teachers, and I keep saying teachers, but I mean all 13 groups, sorry, teachers keeps coming out first, all staff members to be able to present, but in a structured way. I think that would be a great addition for us to hear the wonderful positive things that are happening in the district. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Who else would like? Mr. Conklin?
I'm all right with any unit having a time to speak, but I think we have a public session, so any unit right now has the time. A representative of any unit has the time to come and speak, and individuals within the unit, as we saw tonight, teacher from Big Flats came. I think I'm more in favor, I'm not opposed to this, but I'm more in favor of a committee of board members and the superintendent and whoever he wants to select. It's he because we have a male superintendent. And representatives from, since the HTA asked, I'll use them as an example, because the questions I would have on what Mr. Finnerty said tonight, we couldn't ask. I'd like to know what the breakdown was by building. I'd like to know what the breakdown was by grade level, so that we as a board would have more information. We are not going to get that in the setting we're talking about. They can give us the information in the public setting, which they did, but if we want, which I think they probably want to give us the nuts and bolts, but they can't. So the better approach to get those nuts and bolts would be once a month, once every 6 weeks, whatever you as president and Sue as vice president think is appropriate to set that up. So I'd be more in favor of that because it would get us more information, which I think is the goal.
Thank you. Mr. Feinberg?
I agree with Warren when it comes to getting information. However, adding bargaining units as a line agenda item every single month further legitimizes their importance in this district and what they offer to all of us as employees. However, if the information were submitted beforehand and put on the agenda for the board members to have before the meeting, we'd be able to ask those questions that Warren was bringing up. I have to say I completely agree with the way Erin stated her opinions, and I couldn't have said it more eloquently than she did. So, thank you.
Well done.
Thank you very much. So let me look to this end. Katrina?
Erin, you said it wonderfully. Warren, I think that you are absolutely correct in this. I think that a committee is definitely necessary to even dig further into it. Matt, you are also right. I am just echoing my support in the fact that I think it's really important that the board establishes the committee. It is a committee of the board, not like a superintendent ad hoc committee, because I've noticed that when the board sets the goals and we have a little bit more control over what's going on, those specific goals get met. You know, we saw it with how we redid our survey. We saw it with how they chose to create and do the norms. Like, the board set the goal, this happened, it happened in a quick amount of time. We were able to get to some solution. So I feel like that's why it's really important to have that direct communication and then going back with the president. And I would really love to serve on that committee if it is formed, so I wanted to make sure that I throw that out there. But yeah, I'm in big favor of all of this. So, and I'm glad that you put it on the agenda. Thank you, Dan, because you said just email it to me, and I did, and you put it on here, and I really appreciate that.
Glad you were able to hink through the email, get it over. Sorry. Sue, please.
I agree that we should do both things. I think we should have policy, so if they'd like to come, anybody. And I also strongly think we should have a labor relations council that the board organizes, the board runs. So I don't know if we have to make a motion or what we do.
Well, I'll speak and then we can try to maybe put a motion out to see if someone wants to move it. But so I think I agree with what you said, Aaron. I mean, it's a positive opportunity for input and feedback. I think that's always a good thing. I think there do have to be, just like with public comment, we have parameters, right? We have time limits. We have subject matter guidelines, right? So this would be the same sort of thing where, and I have complete faith and confidence in our unit leadership that they would have no problem staying well within those guidelines. But so to me, the next step would be consideration of a policy that could, just like we have a policy for public comment at board meetings, we have a policy for, I don't know, call it association comment at board meetings or something to that effect. And it sounds like there's general consensus amongst those present to have something like that. I'm also in favor of a labor relations committee, council, whatever you call it. I don't know exactly what there may be some rules of that implicate the collective bargaining agreement that we have to kind of figure out, so I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I think we could have a motion that the board resolves to create a policy to allow for association comments at board meetings and for the creation of a labor relations council, both of which will be further determined following passage of the resolution. Is that consistent with what, I think it's kind of what I'm hearing. I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but.
Yeah, but in agenda, I think you had said communication, but I think also it has to be agenda placement, adding something to the agenda. I know that might be worked out later, but maybe I didn't hear you say that.
Yeah, well, I'll restate. I meant to say that if I didn't say, but so the motion would be for the creation of a policy that allows for or sets the conditions around association comments to be a regular item on the board's agenda for business meetings, and for the board to look further into how it can create or sponsor a labor relations council / committee. I think we need a vote. Someone has to move that. I'm sorry. Second. Okay. Any other discussion on that? And it would be, I'll discuss it, it would be referred to the policy committee for action, because what we're talking about here is the next step is the policy creation. Okay, all those in favor of that motion that I just said, say aye. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. With that, we will move to item 14, board member comments. And before I open it up, I just want to, we had a little discussion in the last meeting, and I know I said we've had some debate maybe, if you will, about like board member comments and what the intent of those are. And there isn't really a policy that specifically says what the intent is, but the point I was trying to make is that to the extent we have items that the board really wants to discuss and act upon, I would much prefer we get them on the agenda so that everyone knows they're coming. And it seems like that worked well for this meeting, so I just continue to encourage that. But there is a policy 2342 that talks about, once we have set an agenda, that it is possible that, I'll read two sentences. Items of business not on the agenda may be discussed and acted upon if a quorum of the members agree to consider them during the board comments. So it is certainly possible that under this policy, someone could come up and say, I really think we need to talk about X, and propose a motion, and if there's a quorum that votes for it, so be it. So that does exist as an option. And then if there is something that you think should be on the agenda, and it's not, it says board members may also introduce potential future agenda items during the board comment period for the full board to consider. Each meeting agenda will provide a brief period for board members to offer comment, share information, or raise an issue to see if it is the will of the board to consider the issue at a future meeting. So, in summary, you can offer comments of whatever type you want. You can see if a quorum of the board or a majority would like to add something to a future agenda, or you can propose a motion of some sort for something that wasn't on the agenda, again, if a quorum is in support of it. So it's kind of the landscape of what can happen during board comments. And with that, is there anyone who would like to comment? Katrina? And I'm going to keep time.
Okay, that's fine. It's a quick comment. So I brought it up at the last meeting, and everybody said it was too premature. We had to wait for the presentation to talk about the start times and whether or not we're going to have a committee. Like the people who put the petition out has been asking us to do, and we have had emails from people, asking us to continue to look into this. There were teachers here tonight talking about the scheduling, all that stuff. I think that this is a very big thing. I think we do need to have a committee to look into it. I think we need to figure out the best solution moving forward. And I don't think that some of my questions I didn't get to ask them or really put it out there, but like, this has to be revisited and the board has to look into it, and we have to come up with a solution, and it can't just be, we're working on it and whatever. Like, a committee has to be formed. Our public did come. They gave us this is a petition. I understand what you were saying, Dan, like, okay, it's only 425, there's still a whole bunch of people, but feedback I've gotten from staff was like, it was a petition I would have wanted to sign, but I couldn't sign because I'm nervous about, I can't sign a petition because I work for the district. I mean, that could have been another 400 people, which would be right around the 1,000 people, 1,500 people that come out and vote for our things. I mean, I do want to hear back from as many people as possible, so I think that a part of that committee's job would be to actively seek information on all sides, but we definitely, this is something that has to be addressed, and so I wanted that motion like I had made from the last one. We got our presentation on all of this, on the start times and how things are going, and I think that we do have to create this committee to look into it.
Okay, and There is a board policy, 2250, talks about board committees. And it is possible, I think what you're referring to would be an ad hoc committee of the board. There's a section that talks about special ad hoc committees of the board, which is like what we had when we updated the board evaluation document. And what it states in the policy is that when appointing a special ad hoc committee of the board president provides the following guidance via resolution of the board that will, and it goes through all of the different things, designate the committee, chairperson, membership, role, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the board votes to approve the purpose, composition, and role of the committee. So we can talk about this, but I think to the extent there's a support here, what I would say is we would vote it to say that the board wants to move forward with the creation of an ad hoc committee, and then under our policy, it would be, you know, my job in obviously in consultation with everyone else to come up with the criteria, and then we would formally approve that at the next meeting, and then we would be, you know, that board would be that committee would be in effect, and it would start to operate. So those would be the steps, I think, to the extent there's a desire to move forward with that. So if you want to make that motion and see if there's a second and discussion.
Yes, I thank you for outlining those steps. That is, after the presentation tonight, there's still I would like to make that motion that you go through, make the resolution, create the guardrails, the accomplishments, what our goals are, what's going to happen. But I mean, then we are really recognizing our constituents and doing our due diligence to, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm trying to say. And so yes, I think that this is a very important thing, and I think we have to do this. So I make that motion. I need a second, please.
Any comments or questions on the motion for the creation, or to direct the president to create the criteria for an ad hoc committee of the board per policy 2250?
Just state the purpose briefly, I don't need a long.
You want, it would...
to focus on the concerns. Yeah.
Okay. It would be to continue to evaluate the, the start times, the length of day, all of the other elements that, have been items of concern or of interest thus far, and to evaluate whether there are further modifications that should be considered at some point in response to the various feedback and input that we've received. So it deals generally with, I think, scheduling, busing, transportation, length of day, start times, those issues. That's what I would say. Is that? Yeah.
So this will be brought back to us after you create the parameters, because I have serious concerns about some of the things you might come up with. Are there going to be no limits? They can direct administration to do
the way the process should work. So if there's a favorable vote, then I would come back with the proposal, that lays out the elements, the scope, the composition, all those things, and then at that point, the board would vote on whether or not to actually create the committee. Yeah. Okay. Other comments or questions on the motion?
No, I just would say I would be voted in favor of the motion with the presentation from the HTA tonight and the fourth grade teacher and the petition. There's a lot of concerns about it, even though we're only 6 weeks in or 10 weeks in. So yes, I would be in support of the motion.
Anyone else want to be recognized? Okay. I'll just say, I think a lot of effort has been made that we everyone's focused on trying to do the right thing. I think we have heard quite a bit of, concerns raised from different sources, and some of that is, I think, part of what happens when there's significant change. But I think a cross-section of stakeholders considering these issues and thinking about options isn't a bad thing, as long as there are the right parameters on what will be considered. I mean, I don't think we can flip a switch and change, things that take months to be able to put into place. And so I would be in favor of it, but I think it has to have the right kind of scope, parameters, understanding of what is possible, and timelines and all those sorts of things that would be fleshed out in the resolution to be considered. So, go ahead. Yeah.
Just thinking about this and providing a little historical context, right? So I was here when Broad Street closed. I was here when Sing Sing closed. I was here when the intermediate school was created, and we saw a lot of change during that time. The things that I'm hearing in our community today are identical to what was being said 20, maybe more years ago, as I was an educator here and living in this community. These are not new things that I'm hearing. If you were to talk to people today who have their children in school, they don't know anything different than what it is in the last few years that they may have had children enrolled. They don't remember being at Broad Street. They don't remember being at Sing Sing. They don't remember not having an intermediate school. But I will say that these comments that we're hearing today are identical in scope to what is in relation to change, right? So I'm just trying to be fair. In saying that, I definitely am in favor of looking at a data-driven approach to reviewing what is working, what is not working, what can be tweaked. Again, and I know I've said this at previous meetings, it's a part of change management and systems that we have put in place. I think it's appropriate when we have a change as significant as we had and have continuing today, that we look at the data that's provided, that we're not just looking at specific subgroups, right, or subsets of what our stakeholders are. We're looking at everything collectively. There are very vocal people that are sharing to make changes. But I also want to acknowledge people that have reached out to us, and there are, who have said, do not change things. We like things the way they are. So I think it is a balance, right? And I think we do a disservice to just listen to one subset of people. And in saying that, I am in favor of a committee that would review this so that we have all collective data, all information to be able to make a wise decision moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would agree, and I think, right, like I pointed out earlier, we have seen a petition, for example, but that represents less than 10%, and there are many folks who may have benefited from some of the changes that we've seen, or think that they're positive in different ways. So getting a full cross-section of input and finding different ways to do that, I think is important. Certainly something that I would want to see in any committee like this. Sue?
I served on the school board when we made the intermediate school 5A. I served on the school board when we did block scheduling with Dr. Reedy. But we never, after we made those decisions, did we have people come with us, come back to us and have all these concerns. Yes, we made the way the teachers were divided, yes, there were issues, but that was back in the 90s. But we didn't have the HCA come or a teacher come and say, now we've lost minutes, or we didn't have BOCES come and say that. There are things that need to be looked at this big change.
I don't disagree.
So,
I just think that
Again, I don't disagree with that, Sue. I think there are a lot more vehicles in which to communicate thought and upset than there were back in the 90s, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So maybe we're hearing more today because there's more vehicles in which to communicate that dislike, right?
Maybe.
Possibly, right? I'm just being fair, right? But, I still hear people today who say block scheduling was the worst thing ever. I love block scheduling. I love teaching under the block. But, I still hear it today. So,
That's true.
yeah, I mean, it's true. There's going to be people on either side of the fence, and I think we just have to be equitable in hearing from all.
Warren?
I just want to refresh my memory. I vividly remember the president of the HTA and the vice president of the HTA vociferously speaking out against the intermediate school. So to say that there was no dissent when the K through 4 and then 5 through 6 program was being proposed, the HTA vociferously spoke out against it. So I think Aaron's more online with the comments are similar today as to what they've been in the past.
I want to bring us back to, so there's a pending motion. Does anyone else want to be heard on the motion, or else we'll have a vote? And the motion, to recap, would be to direct the board president to propose the creation of an ad hoc committee in accordance with board policy to look at the issues that we have, that I talked about. Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. So all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Other board members have comments that they'd like to share during board comment period? Aaron?
Sorry, I'm super chatty tonight. I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing this book with us. This was something that I had brought up at a few board meetings ago, and I'm incredibly passionate about this in the anxious generation and how cell phones, technology, social media, etc. have impacted our children. So I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing this with us as a board, and I hear through Mr. Gill that there may be some professional development surrounding this book study. Awesome, I'm super excited. In saying that, I'd also I'm curious, right? I'm curious about data that supports what we're doing. So I would challenge the district and ask to see if you can do a data comparison of, and this might not be now, right? Because this is so much in its infancy. This might be something that we take a look at in June, right? But I would be interested to see referrals from 2024, 2025, even a subset of a few years to give us a collective, trend average, yes, in comparison to what we're seeing just from 2025 to 2026, right? So, Yeah, categorized. I know within the school tool system you can utilize your conduct forms to, create topic areas and hierarchy of subsets. But I would be curious to see that data from years past versus with the cell phone ban in effect. Just a curiosity. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd also like to throw out there an unfavorable opinion. I think that within the world of we prepare our students for what's next, our portrait of our graduate, the reality is everybody at this table has a phone in front of them right now. Oh, look at this one, living it. Here, Tan's got two, he made up for it. Part of the policy and part of the law talks about educational purposes use. And I think we do a great disservice if we don't prepare students for the appropriate use of cell phones outside these doors. If we approach this from a complete ban point of view, I think the reality of what comes next might smack them in the face. Of all the unfunded mandates that New York State has given us over the years, this is one I would have accepted, that a technology standard strand be brought back to say, here's a vision, appropriate use of handheld technology, and what does that look like in a vertical alignment of our buildings so we're preparing kids for what comes next. I don't want kids to go into the workplace and all of a sudden be on their phones all the time because we did not establish some norms and appropriateness of professionalism, of how to use a phone appropriately. This is different than the idea of social media. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm just talking about educational purposes or workplace importance, how to manage your calendar, how to look at email on it. There are some things that we all do as adults that if we have an opportunity in an educational setting to think about that as a portion of the graduate. So it might be an unpopular opinion, but I think it's worth looking at.
I think that's a fair response, Mr. Gill. I think this is more of a collective thing. I will be very transparent when I share this in that, I come from a technology, I was a technology integration specialist, right? I pushed into schools and I assisted teachers with utilizing the correct, how do we use this tool here in school, right? But it has snowballed into something that is ugly. And even myself as a mom, right? As a mom, I did some things really, really well. I did some things really, really bad, right? And what I would like to encourage is us as a community to come together and do things very much better so that we don't have so much bad. Maybe we're moving to okay, and maybe collectively we're helping our kids, right? It's not just in school, it is a greater mindset that we have to get ourselves around to use as adults as well, right? You look at the time sucker that phones are in the corporate world. It's a time sucker. It really is, So I don't disagree with you, as in everything, it's a teaching process. But we have to come together as a community to decide, are our children worthy of having their childhoods back, of being able to focus on school and each other instead of being on the phone the whole time. And it needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members have comments they'd like to share? Matt?
I'm going to completely switch gears, although what you said is on point, so thank you for that. I just really wanted to thank us sitting here for 4.5 hours. I wanted to thank Tony and Rich for that amazing presentation this evening. It was an immense amount of information, and I learned a lot, and there were things I wasn't aware of, so I wanted to thank you for it, because I got a lot from it. So thank you very much. I also wanted to quickly thank Dr. Douglas and Mrs. Kim Malone, who's the intermediate school president. I brought up comments last month about Kids World, about a supervisory period lacking at the 5th and 6th grade level. And I received an email as a parent over the last couple weeks. I actually received 2 emails from Mrs. Malone over the past month saying that, in fact, Kids World is in the process of being established as a supervisory thing for 5th and 6th graders, and I could not be more happy to hear that. I'm not sure how long it'll take for it to take effect, and if my child as a 6th grader misses that opportunity, it makes me feel just as good to know that future 5th and 6th graders will have that opportunity. So thank you, Dr. Tom Douglas, thank you, Mrs. Kim Malone, and whoever else was a party to organizing this so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kara?
Just quick, since we're here kind of late, it was brought to my attention, Mr. Gill, if you can look into this, that 4th grade swim is no longer, and when it was brought to my attention, of course, I asked questions because that's what I do, and now they say it's maybe moved to 5th grade, but is 5th grade really a good place for it? Because, you know, as kids get older, they get more nervous when they can't do certain things, so could you just look into that maybe?
No, I'm fully aware of it, so I can give you a brief response. The impetus really started with the lack of doing construction of PE spaces at the high school this year, and we didn't want the current 4th grade to go without that experience, but there was no way that we could take up that PE space when they'd lost the north gym, or excuse me, the south gym. So it was like, so how do we continue this experience and make sure that that cohort gets it? And so we need to incorporate it into 5th grade so we don't lose a cohort. So that's what started it, and it also provided a lot more logistical ability to pull from one building and coordinating amongst 3 elementaries with the high school staff to use that spot. Now it's a very much cleaner coordination between just the PE teachers at the intermediate school and the high school teachers. So it started with, we don't want to lose this, you know, we brought it back in 2017, I believe, 16 after a hiatus, and we hold it tight. We want to make sure it's a lifelong skill. So how do we make sure this 4th grade does get it? And the only way to do it, because of the PE issue of spaces at the high school, was moved to 5th, and then the coordination was better with one building to one building. I think it will stay at 5th grade. I mean, we'll talk with PE teachers. This was part of their conversations. I think where the failure was in the timeline of communications to be appropriate with people. And that we recognized as you know, we made some things, we had the right conversations with the right people at the ground level, but, you know, the school year got away from us and other things happened. And now we did find out about this, I think last week it was, Joe and I were talking about this, and like, yes, we need to communicate that. And I believe he's working with Damien to put out a district-wide message to go out. We talked about it yesterday, I'm not sure how far along we are. Yeah, so a message to go out from Damien as the Director of Athletics and PE to the principals to share with families and staff what happened and how well it played out. So just don't want to, we want to make sure that 4th grade cohort does get this. It just can't happen this year.
Please. No.
So just to piggyback on that, the 5th graders will not get that this year. There'll be no swimming. Okay, so there'll be no swimming at all for elementary. Okay.
Katrina?
Yes, so I just wanted to bring up, because you guys were talking about the whole cell phone ban, and you know, Tony, I honestly don't disagree with that. There's a fine line, and that's why I thought like the Yonder pouches were a good idea, and I think that like that's why Julie was a proponent of that, is because you can go into a classroom, unslide it, utilize it for an educational purpose, slide it back in, and then they're, you know, they're able to function with it. And I think that's another reason why I was really pushing hard for being able to have cell phones that are disabled from social media, because the law is very clear that if the phone doesn't have the social media on it, you can still use it. And they do make phones that are smart that you can't have social media built into it. So that's why I kind of wanted that in policy, because I felt the same thing. And I do have to bring this up because I did, and this is not to be like in a vicious, malicious way in any way, but in the anxious generation, because I did bring this book up when we were discussing the start times, and I think that this is another reason why it's very, very important, is because in chapter 5, it talks about 4 foundational harms. And that is the social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and then addiction. And the sleep deprivation, there is a lot in here about that. And it talks specifically, and I brought it up in the meeting when we were talking about start times. And I asked the question, I said, how is it going to impact the kids who are going through puberty, because those are the kids who have to be the latest. It talks about it in this book. And those are the kids that are now in the school the earliest. They should be the latest developmentally. And I know that we want to gather the research and the data from the different points to see, but what data we can never collect is the potential of one child. We will never know what that child could have been if they had better circumstances to function under. So we would never know that if a child was getting more sleep, that they were going to do better in 5th grade. You know, you can't compare apples to oranges. We have data, the research to say this is the sleep. You know, they have a push in the law right now to make it so no school starts before 8 a.m. or 8:30. You know, we have different countries around us, we're worldwide, that have shorter days, that have different structures. And I think that, you know, when you were talking about not going back and people, you know, there was the banter and then nothing happened. Well, maybe that's because people just got used to having a bad system. And that doesn't mean that it's the right system. It just means that people got used to it and didn't want to come out and keep trying to fight it. And it doesn't make it right. It just means that people got used to it. And I think that we need to start coming from the perspective of being more progressive in how are we the leaders to make sure that we're changing things and always having students, because the one book that I did want everybody to read was great on their behalf. And the one thing that he talks about is if student performance is not 50% of your agenda at every meeting, yes, if it is not on, then the student's performance will not be there. And unless adult behavior changes, student performance will not change. And so I'm very passionate about this, and I think that we can really make really big strides, but our focus has to be on the students. So that's what I wanted to say. I want to say thank you to everybody. I want to say thank you for the community who's coming out to talk to us. Thank you to the administration. Thank you. Thank you. I think we're all going to get through this, and we're going to work to better everybody, and I look forward to it. And I especially want to say thank you, Dan. I think that you have conducted a wonderful meeting tonight, and I really appreciate it.
Go ahead, Sue.
Because October 26th, I don't know how many people are aware of the Badamachi program that takes place. We had a student come here in 1996, Yoshio, and he and Yomiko stayed with us each, I don't remember how long. And then he emailed us back and said, I'm coming to stay with you for another 6 weeks in the summer. We actually took him cross country with us. He is one of the adults that are coming in this congregation and starting October 26th. And Katrina actually wrote me into having 2 boys stay at her house from October 26th to Friday morning because they, for some reason, couldn't find somebody else in Horses to do it. So, here we are, but I'm very excited. If you have a chance, they have a welcome party here on the 26th of October, and then actually the serenade party is the 28th because there's actually 10 adults coming, but 7 of them are leaving on Wednesday morning. So if you have a chance, I think time to go to those things. But yeah, it's an exciting time. So just want everybody to know about that Japanese program is still going on.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Katrina, for your comments. I'd like to just thank my fellow board members. I do think we had vigorous debate, but all in a professional, positive way. We made some solid decisions, and I'm glad to see the board functioning like we did tonight. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for those who are still here and stuck with us. And with that, I would see, does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Abstentions? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.